Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Happy Thursday, everybody, and it is prediction day. Today, Brian and I are giving our predictions and our game records for the Notre Dame versus USC game happening Saturday night inside of Notre Dame Stadium, annual rivalry game for the Jules Shillelagh Trophy. And then afterwards, Brian, we're going to spend the rest of the show talking some ball, man. We're going to be talking about a lot of the other college football games that are going on. We're going to take a deep dive preview into about 5 of them. Then we have a bunch of other games that we're going to mention, ones that you guys should keep your eye out on, but obviously none more important than the one happening Saturday night inside of South Bend, inside of Notre Dame Stadium. Brian, I am beyond excited for this one, man. This is going to be awesome.
I can't wait for this game. It's going to be a blast, but you know what? That's the life of not always what you want it to be. Quick question, Trev. How's my sound? Sound okay? Everything good?
It got real, like it sounded like you were talking in slow motion there for just a second. That was interesting.
All right, so I'm gonna let you go out and come back in and see if we can.
Well, sounds good. Well, listen, everybody, Brian's on the road, but we're still podcasting like champions. You guys know what the rule is. But listen, today, as you guys know, while Brian gets his audio figured out for the podcast for today, today is prediction day, and Notre Dame plays USC. Number 13 Notre Dame in the country takes on the 20th ranked USC Trojans at night inside of Notre Dame Stadium. 7:30 p.m. kickoff. Right now, Notre Dame is still 9.5-point favorites on FanDuel. I just went and made sure that we looked at that. Then the over-under right now is still set at 61.5. And if you guys have been following what we've been talking about all week, these are two really, really high-powered offenses going back and forth at it. A game that it's going to tell us a lot about the Notre Dame offense if they can get back on the right track, but it's definitely going to tell us a lot about the defense. And this defense has turned things around the last couple of weeks, but now it's time. This is the culmination game like we've talked about all week. All of the things that you did well against Boise State and NC State is going to have to carry over, Brian, into what is now probably the biggest matchup left on their regular season schedule. From an optic standpoint, potentially from a talent standpoint, this is going to be a really interesting one.
Yeah, it is. Do I sound like a human now?
You do.
Okay.
Yes, you do.
No, it is. And look, and the game's made tougher now. We found out today that Gabriel Rubio won't be playing in the game. And so, your best run defender's out for this game. So it's going to be a battle. And, but this is what last year's team went through, right? I mean, last year's team, went through injuries all the time. And this is about the time of the year. I mean, the NC State game would have been the Stanford game, which is the last game that Notre Dame had Benjamin Morrison. We're a game removed, the Louisville game, which is when they lost Boubacar Traore. We're 3 games removed from the Purdue game, where last year they lost Jordan Patelho and Ashton Craig for the season and Billy Shroud for a chunk of the year. So, those things you look at and you say, like, okay, yeah, that sucks. You're down a guy. Well, USC's down 2 starting running backs. Like, that's football. That's college football. Who has the better depth? Who has the better, preparation? Who has the who has the mental toughness to overcome those type of things and go out there and win this huge game? Because what I love about this game, Trev, is just from a Notre Dame fan and a college football standpoint is the game means something this year. And USC fans can be all up in their feelings about a comment I made yesterday, but the reality is in the counting this year, the last 15 years, USC's only been ranked 5 times going into this matchup. And so the games just haven't meant a whole lot. Now, this game means something. USC needs this game to build a playoff resume. Notre Dame needs this game to build a playoff resume. And that's what makes this rivalry great. This is what the rivalry used to always be. It's like there was something on the line for both teams. And sadly, the last 15 years, there's been too many years where nothing was on the line for either team. But lately, obviously, Notre Dame's had a lot more to play for. USC is trying to rebuild under Lincoln Riley. This is now the second time and really, or third time in 4 years that going into this game, it means something for at least one of the teams. Obviously in 2022, it meant something for USC. They needed to beat Notre Dame to have a shot to clinch a playoff berth in the Pac-12 title game. In 2023, USC was undefeated and ranked in the top 10. They had a path to the to the playoff. Last year, Notre Dame, needs to beat USC to secure a playoff spot. And this year, they're both going to this game with a shot for the playoffs. And so that just adds something to this, but it also puts pressure on both teams. Say, who's going to handle that pressure the best? Who's going to handle that moment the best? And the winner is going to say, okay, you're going to go into, late October and say, we've now put ourselves in position where for Notre Dame, if we went out, we're in. If you're USC, you can stub your toe one more time if you win a game like this. You lose this game, you have to run the table to be in the playoffs. Like, I actually don't think USC gets knocked out of the playoffs if they lose this game, Trev. I don't. I mean, I think, they may not be able to host perhaps if they don't win out, but like, you look at USC's schedule and what they have left on the schedule. I mean, they've got Oregon left on the schedule. They have, I'm looking at Nebraska on the road, who's ranked in the top 25 left on the schedule. They have Iowa at home. If Iowa beats Penn State this weekend, Iowa's going to be knocking on the door of the top 25 with their resume that they're building. And so, but it puts you in a situation if you lose this game, if you're USC, where you're in the situation Notre Dame is in, where you can't afford to lose another one because you're not getting in at 9-3. And for Notre Dame, it's like you lose this game, you're out. I mean, you not only are likely out, you should be out because they won't have a resume good enough to be a playoff team unless they're going up against a bunch of 4-loss teams for that 9-12 spot. So I love that there's so much on the line for this game. That's what a rivalry is supposed to be. I have my feelings about whether or not the rivalry should continue based on the what USC wants out of the rivalry. But as long as they play it, you want the games to be like this. And for Notre Dame, this is your last chance, as we've been saying all week, to really make a statement. This is a statement game for Notre Dame, opportunity for Notre Dame. You're going to make a statement one way or the other, Trev. It's just about whether or not you're making a good statement or a not so good statement.
Oh, agreed. Look, man, like you said, this is what you want this rivalry to come down to, and it's a prove-it game for both teams. For Notre Dame, can you prove that you're back? You decimated NC State, you decimated Arkansas, you decimated Boise State, but those are teams that you should. Yes, those are teams that can compete with Notre Dame on any given Saturday. But on paper, this is the last 3 games were games that Notre Dame should have won and won handily. Really, Purdue as well. When you look at USC, you have it at the point of they just picked up their biggest Big Ten win since they've joined the league. Are they back? People aren't having enough of a discussion around if USC is back. USC hasn't been relevant in quite some time either. And so you have to think about what this game means for USC, what this game means for Notre Dame. And that's when this starts to become a very, very, very interesting conversation. You add into the fact that this is the 20th anniversary of the Bush Push, something that USC's Twitter page felt like putting out there. They said happy anniversary, and it's the play where Matt Leinart got his way pushed into the end zone. You add into the fact that this could be the last time that these two teams meet in the regular season. Adds a lot of context to this one. And it's so meaningful. We spent a lot of the day on Tuesday this week talking about what this game meant to all of us. There were people in the chat talking about their memories for the Notre Dame USC game. There was a lot of people talking about, they remember the first time they went to see that game in person. I talked about sitting down and watching it with my dad. And I'm sure a lot of USC fans have the same memories on their side as well. It's what you love out of college football rivalries, man. And you hope big picture that it continues. If USC wants to continue being a certain type of way about this rivalry, then I guess it is what it is. And unfortunately, we might not get to see this next season. I hope that changes. But fact of the matter is they have a huge matchup on Saturday. And it's one that I am really, really excited about diving into and predicting. So typically, like we do here, I'll go first. I'll give my prediction. I'll give how what the final score is, who I think is going to win, and how I see this game playing out. And to get us started, I do have Notre Dame winning. I have them winning 34-24 over USC. I do see this being a double-digit game. Going back to 2019, the victor of this game has won by double digits. Happened in 21, 22, 23, and it happened last season. I think that trend continues this Saturday. Look, fact of the matter is USC hasn't had a whole lot of success inside of Notre Dame Stadium since 2011. Notre Dame Stadium at night is a tough environment to play in. If you've ever been to a game inside of Notre Dame Stadium at night, you guys know what I'm talking about. You can ask Clemson how that goes. You can ask USC how that goes. Every game in South Bend against USC has been played under the lights since 2011, which is really cool to say. And that's the last time that USC won was 2011. Offensively, this unit has to get back to who they were against Texas A&M, against Purdue, and against Arkansas. So what does that mean? That means being efficient. That means finishing drives. That means punching it in the red zone, putting points on the board in the red zone, something that we talked about earlier this week. And then defensively, they have to continue their aggressive philosophy and not make the Al Golden mistake. This is one of the games where not a lot of Notre Dame fans can sit back and say, man, I wish Al Golden was back. Because let's be real about something, folks. Lincoln Riley bested Al Golden 2 of the 3 times that they faced each other. And the one year that Al Golden really put his stamp on this rivalry was a year where Notre Dame didn't have anything to lose. They were 21st in the country. They already had 2 losses coming into this game. USC was undefeated, ranked 10th. Notre Dame was already out of the playoff discussion. So this is now Chris Ash's opportunity, along with his defensive coaching staff, to now put his stamp on this rivalry game and get it kicked off to a hot start. And that's something that I'm really hoping to see on Saturday from the defensive unit. Look, I think Notre Dame jumps on them early. Like I said, it's a night game. The crowd's going to be rocking. I don't know how some Notre Dame fans are. Let me know in the chat. But look, this is one where I'm getting the sense of it. I see it on the message boards at irishbreakdown.com, all of those different things. Notre Dame fans are kind of starting to believe again. A lot of people were hurt after the loss to Texas A&M. Super understandable. And I was one of those fans. Yes, I have this job, but I'm still also a Notre Dame fan at heart. And now I'm getting the sense that people are starting to believe again. And then you add the rivalry on top of it. This stadium is going to be going absolutely nuts. So I think Notre Dame jumps on them early. But like we've seen in games where Notre Dame gets a jump on USC, they'll battle back. 2019 is one of those games. I was watching that one earlier today. Notre Dame jumped out to, I think, a 17-3 lead at one point, and the final score was 30-27. So I think Notre Dame jumps on them early. It's a night game. The crowd's going to be rocking. But like we've seen in previous rivalries, USC is not going to go away. The second half is going to be crucial. I put up a piece on the premium message boards about Notre Dame's second half defense versus USC's second half offense. USC's only beaten Notre Dame 4 times since 2010, and every win, they outscored Notre Dame in the second half. I think that narrative changes. I don't think USC is going to be able to mount a comeback against this Notre Dame defense that's been clicking. They haven't allowed a single offensive point in the last 3 games in the second half. I think Notre Dame pulls away in the second half. Notre Dame's defense remains dominant, and they remain the dominant second half team that we know them to be. So I have Notre Dame winning 34-24 in South Bend. It's what my final score I'm going with, man, and I'm hoping that it comes true. I am absolutely hoping that it comes true. If you guys have a final score prediction in the chat, I know a lot of people like to put theirs in. Feel free to put it in. Let us know what you guys think too. Brian, what do you got?
All right, so Trev, just a real quick thing. They just started doing drilling underneath my room, so it may get loud here, and I'm going to have to go down to the conference room here in a second. But just real quick, here's my thing, Trev. I love a lot of stuff that you're saying. This game is really going to come down to which team imposes their will on the other team. I think that's really the big thing is USC able to come out and impose their will on Notre Dame physically the way that they did Michigan? I don't think that they will because Notre Dame's not Michigan. Notre Dame's a better team, but we still have seen a little bit of an up and down team from Notre Dame this year. So they're going to have to find out can Notre Dame impose their will on USC the way that they did against NC State, Boise State, Arkansas, Purdue, but did not against Arkansas or against Miami and Texas A&M. And so it really is just sort of and that's kind of normal for this time of the year. What version? Most teams have kind of shown a little bit of something. I think that's what it comes down to is who imposes their will physically on the other team. And when it comes to prediction, I mean, you gotta pick a side, right? And I'm going with the side that I think that it's going to be Notre Dame. One thing that was weird, in my opinion, about the Texas A&M and Miami games is one thing Notre Dame has done under Marcus Freeman is they usually show up to play in the big games physically, like physicality wise. Look, they got out coached and out athleted against Ohio State in 2022, And obviously there were some mistakes that cost them the game in 2023, but it's rarely been a game like maybe Louisville, Clemson in 2023. There's rarely been a game, especially the last 2 years, where Notre Dame just got out physicaled and outplayed in the trenches in games the way they did against Miami and Texas A&M. Well, what we've seen from Notre Dame in the last few weeks is a different type of Notre Dame team. And I think this Notre Dame team comes out fired up. I think this team comes out, excited. I know that you're hearing Danton Lynn talk about what Chad Bowden's helping with, all this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But this is still about the players on the field. It's still about the coaches, on the sidelines. And at the end of the day, I still feel like Notre Dame's the better team. And I look at potential factors in the game, windy, it's going to be rainy. Which team? That's why I think it's even more so that it's going to be about what team is the more physical team. And I just still feel like Notre Dame is that team. If Notre Dame comes out and plays their game, whether it's throwing the ball 15 times because it's rainy or 40 times because it's not, they're still, to me, the team that in both sides of the ball is more physical. The rain makes me a little bit nervous about the Notre Dame D-line because I do think there's a size disadvantage there, especially with Gabriel Rubio out for this game. But I still feel like Notre Dame is the more physical team. I think Notre Dame is still the better coach team, not by as much as it was last year. They've done a good job. Credit to USC and especially Danton Lynn. Every year he's there, they make fewer and fewer mistakes week after week. But I just still feel like Notre Dame's a better team. I still think they're better in the trenches. I think they've got the better quarterback. I think they've got the better skill talent on offense when you encompass all of it. And, yes, USC's got great receivers. So does Notre Dame. USC's got great tight ends. So does Notre Dame. With their top two backs out, like Notre Dame already had the running back advantage. But now with Jordan and Sanders out, it's a significant advantage. So then it comes down to, okay, whose line plays better? And I think it's going to be Notre Dame's offensive line. I think the defense will not revert back to what it was against Miami, Texas A&M, and Purdue, but I also don't know that it's going to look like it did the last 2 weeks from a results standpoint, just because I think USC is the better team compared to the last two teams. But I think we see a similar performance, Trevor, where they are disruptive. You're going to give up your big plays to USC. They're going to move the ball at times. They're going to score points. It's just, can you come up with enough stops to allow your own offense to win this game? And I think that's ultimately what Notre Dame is going to do. So taking the weather into effect, and the fact that you're missing Gabriel Rubio and Ashton Craig, at center and nose tackle, that's a problem. I still think Notre Dame is going to the better team, and I have Notre Dame winning 31-24 is how I have this game playing out. My score prediction has changed as we've gotten closer to Saturday, and the calls for rain get stronger and stronger and stronger. If it was more of a dry night, Trev, I would probably have this more 38-24 type of game, maybe 41-27-24 type of game. But I think with the weather being what it is, I see a little bit of a tighter game. Both teams are going to have to rely on the run a little bit more, but I think Notre Dame's still a better team. So I'm going Notre Dame 31, USC 24.
I like that. You and I both have Notre Dame covering, like I said at the start of the show, their spread on FanDuel. Notre Dame is favored right now by 9.5 points. Actually, I have them. You have USC covering the 9.5 spread. So
hope I'm wrong. I said, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it ends up being a more convincing game, but
I hear you. Oh, I hear you. One of my touchdowns, I forgot to dive into this. One of my touchdowns is a defensive touchdown. Notre Dame has scored on defense in their last two games against USC. They scored on defense in 23, scored on defense twice in 2024. So I see that trend continuing this Saturday as well. So Brian, again, recap his prediction, 31-24 Notre Dame wins, minus 34-24 Notre Dame wins. We both have the Irish getting the victory and keeping the jeweled shillelagh in South Bend. Brian, let's talk some game records. And like we always do, we split it up between offense and defense. And we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. I'll get us started. For game records on offense, this one was relatively simple for me, and it is a big game. We talked about him on Wednesday and Tuesday. We talked about him all throughout this week, and this is potentially CJ Carr's only opportunity to play in the Notre Dame USC game, which is a crazy thing to say, but he's my first game wrecker. I liked his performance against NC State. I thought he managed the game well against Boise State. These are the games that the lights are on you. It's for the Miamis. It's for the Texas A&Ms. And to some degree, he passed both of those tests relative to where he was at coming into the game. It was his first start against Miami. I wasn't expecting him to look like how he looked against Arkansas. Against Texas A&M at night, it was his first start inside of Notre Dame Stadium. Wasn't expecting him to look like how he did against NC State and Boise and moments against Purdue. But now you have 6 starts under your belt. USC comes to town. This is the biggest rivalry that Notre Dame has. CJ Carr is going to have to play like, especially now when you factor in the elements, he's going to have to do a better job managing the offense. I think D'Anton Lynn is going to try to do things on defense to try to confuse him pre and post snap. CJ Carr is going to have to play a clean game. He's coming off of a game where he threw his first interception since Texas A&M. Taking care of the football with the elements is going to be huge. Commanding the offense is going to be huge. Keeping your composure is going to be a huge factor in this game. So, Brian, my first game wrecker is quarterback CJ Carr.
No, I dig it. Mine's Jeremiah Love. I look at games like this, Trevor, and to win a game like this, you need your stars to play like stars, right? Like this is when your legacy is defined. And I do think that's something that Jeremiah Love cares about. Not that he like obsesses over it, like I care about my legacy, but I think it's something that's important to him. He wants to be known as someone who was a great player and a winner and all those type of things, as great players should want to be known that way. And how do you get defined as a great player? It's games like this. This is what you're known for. And so I think that he's gonna be a big part of this game. Running the ball, passing the ball. I mean, he was going off on USC in the first half last year. I mean, the Notre Dame running backs as a duo were elite against them last year. I mean, Jeremiah had just over 90 yards rushing, and he got played one series of the third quarter.
99.
Then Jadarian comes off the bench and has 112 yards, almost all of it in the second half. It was 112, right, Trev? I think is what that number was for him.
112 or 111, I don't remember.
Yeah, and so, I mean, they both went off, and so you could put Jeremiah and Jadarian here, but I'm specifically focusing on Jeremiah because I think this is the game where you get back to having the impact in the run game and the pass game, and potentially even as a blocker in this game. So I just have a feeling that Notre Dame is going to need Jeremiah Love to play like the star running back he is if they're going to win this game. And so I'm going Jeremiah Love as my first game wrecker.
I love it. I love that pick. And for a lot of those reasons, that's why for my second pick, I'm going with Malachi Fields. This is why you got brought to South Bend. It's for games like this. As cool as your 66-yard touchdown was that was celebrated by a backflip against Purdue, it was great. I watch it all the time. That's not why you were brought to South Bend. It wasn't for Purdue. It wasn't for Boise State. It wasn't for NC State. It's not for Syracuse. It's not for Navy. It was for games like USC at home at night. Notre Dame finally has a weapon in the boundary that is now a really viable part of their offense. And we talked about the matchup yesterday. He's going to be facing a 6'3" corner. So it's not going to be an easy test for him. But this is why Notre Dame went out, got you in the transfer portal to bring you in and give CJ Carr, or at the time, whoever was going to start a quarterback, a weapon, a viable weapon in the boundary. Malachi Fields is going to have to be that guy. Jaden Greathouse is still questionable. Eli Raridan is coming off a 100-yard game. D'Anton Lynn's a smart coach. He's not going to let number 9 go crazy on this defense. Malachi Fields is coming off of a game with 1 catch for 20 yards. NC State did a good job of taking him away. Malachi Fields, also Mike Denbrock, is going to have to do a good job of finding different ways to scheme him the football, whether that's moving him from field to boundary, motioning him into the slot, motioning him into a stack. But Malachi Fields is going to have to be a game changer in this one because at the end of the day, short and sweet, this is why you got brought to South Bend. So Brian, Fields is my second game wrecker.
I'm there with you. I have it as my third. So for all the reasons you talked about, that's why you brought Malachi Fields here. It was not to beat up on Purdue. It was not to beat up on NC State and Arkansas. It was to win games like this. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one. My number 2 is Eli Raridan. And it's all encompassing. A lot of my picks because of the weather are all encompassing. Eli Raridan's going to have a big game blocking. He's going to have some tough catches in this game. Maybe he's a red zone weapon. I still don't understand why, with all their red zone struggles, they don't lean more on their 6'4", 225-pound pounder receiver and their 6'7", 250-plus pound athletic tight end. I mean, like sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Sometimes it's just my dude's better than your dude, and throw the ball up there. And that's why I have Eli here. In every phase of the game, Eli has to have a big day. I don't know that they can run the ball as effectively as they need to win this game if Eli doesn't have a big day. I think he's going to have to make some important catches and some tough catches in this game as well. So I think Eli Raridan's going to have to play. And he's in a game where the other team has stud tight ends as well. They got 2 of them. And so you're going to need him to say, hey, look, anything you can do, I can do better type of thing when it comes to, not that he's matched up against Lake McCree or Walker Lyons, but it's kind of like in that kind of game, you're going to need guys to do that. And so that's why he is my number 2 game record.
No, I love that pick, obviously, but I do, in all seriousness, I do love that pick. We talk about indirect matchups here all the time. We talked about Notre Dame's running back room versus USC's running back room, and now the indirect matchup with the tight ends. I like that a lot. My third and final game record on offense is more of a group. It's not necessarily one individual player, but it's the interior of the offensive line. The injury to Ashton Craig stinks. It does, and it's unfortunate for that young man that he's not now in back-to-back seasons going to be able to participate in a Notre Dame USC game. But at the end of the day, like Brian said at the start of this is football, and people get hurt. It's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate aspect to the game. But now it's time for Joe Otting to step into the limelight, and he's going to have no time to kind of get his wits about him. He's getting kind of thrown into the fire. And the interior of this offensive line, guards specifically, Billy Schrauth and Gerby Lambert, are going to have to do a lot to help pick him up and help support him in his first start. Billy Schrauth a little bit more than Gerby Lambert, because I don't know how much you want to put on a redshirt freshman going into, what would this be, his 7th start of his career. But Billy Schrauth played alongside Joe Otting the entire spring because Ashton Craig was out coming back from his first knee injury. But the interior of this offensive line has a unique task. They don't have the size of, an Arkansas interior defensive line with Ian Gefford and Cameron Ball, but they're very long. They're all 6'5", they're 295. Their biggest guy, Keyshawn Silver, is 6'4", 315. So this is going to be a unique test for this Notre Dame interior offensive line. They're going to have to perform, like we talk about on this show all the time. When quarterbacks get pressured up the middle, that throws a lot of things off. And we saw that happen at times against Miami. We saw it happen at times against Texas A&M. So they're going to have to really be sound up the middle. In the run game, you don't want your running backs making their first move 2 to 3 yards in the backfield. How does that happen? You get immediate penetration up the middle. You want a prime example of that happening? Go watch the tape from last week. Brandon Cleveland had himself a day in South Bend, Indiana last Saturday because he was able to get quick penetration. He was quick off the ball, but he's a little bit bigger than what some of the other USC defensive linemen are. So with that being said, I have the interior of Notre Dame's offensive line being my 3rd game record. They're going to have a big one, Brian. I know you said Malachi Fields was your 3rd. Did you have another one? Okay.
Yeah, Eli and Jeremiah. So we're good. We can go over the defense.
Right on. Game records on defense, and this is the side of the ball that a lot of people are going to have their eyes on, myself included, and they're going to have a really tough task in front of them. Where I'm starting with my game records on defense, and I wrote this before the Gabriel Rubio injury was released, but it still stays true, if not more so now than ever. My first game record is another group, and it's the interior defensive line. Now with Gabriel Rubio out, your biggest interior defensive lineman in the rotation. He has been one of your most consistent interior defensive linemen against the rush. And he's actually been able to generate quite a bit of pressure despite his strength not being a pass rusher. That's a big loss. So what does that mean? Jared Dawson is going to have to step up, really continue playing the way that he's going to have to. Jason Onye, it's time, brother. Like, it is now time to be the person that we heard about all fall. It's time to be the person that you have had the potential to be. And there's no better opportunity to break out than when you play USC at home at night. Elijah Hughes has been getting more reps. He's going to have to be somebody that rotates in, is impactful in his snaps. Then, of course, we all know what Donovan Hinish is capable of. We talked yesterday about the interior Notre Dame pass rush is going to have to win some of their matchups against a pretty big USC offensive line. So it's going to be a collective effort like it was at the start of the season, a collective effort to help replace Riley Mills and Howard Cross. But Brian, you said something that was really impactful at the start of the show, man. This isn't unfamiliar territory for Notre Dame. They went into last year's USC game without Howard Cross, another one of their impactful interior defensive linemen. So it's unfortunate. It's a part of the game, but the interior of Notre Dame's defensive line is going to have a game on Saturday night.
For me, it's a lot of the similar stuff. It's Jared Dawson. I think Jared Dawson has been their second best run defender up the middle with behind Gabriel Rubio. So with Gabriel Rubio out, you're going to need Jared Dawson to step up. It's no different than what you said about Malachi Fields. This is what you brought Jared Dawson here to do. You didn't come here to have him dominate Purdue and Navy and Boston College. You brought him here to help you win games like this. And this is a game where you need those guys to step up and make those plays. So I think, and we've talked about this, Trev, Jared Dawson, when he's on his game and playing, is been a force against the run. And you're going to need him to do that again in this game as well. He was my number one. So we kind of see it the same way. You went with Onye and the interior as a whole. I'm just going specific with Jared Dawson because I feel like he's got to really step up and fill that void that was left by Rubio. But yours is actually, to me, brings even more to it because you're going to also need Onye to be better. You're going to need Elijah Hughes to be better. Maybe Armel Mukam plays a little bit. You're going to need that whole unit to play better. My focus is more on Jared Dawson's ability to play the run very well, what you're going to need from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Skill set wise, it's almost an immediate replacement. Different body types, but effectiveness is still relatively equal. My second game record, and typically I work my way, front to back. I'll go one D-line, one linebacker, one secondary. This week I'm switching it up a little bit, and I have two in the secondary, and the first one's Leonard Moore. I think he's the best cornerback in the country. But again, like we talked about Malachi Fields, like we talked about Jeremiah Love, these are the games where you have to be the best cornerback in the country. You have to effectively shut down one side of the field, especially with the offense that's coming to town Saturday night. He's going to have his matchups with Jacoby Lane. He's going to have his matchups with Tanuk Hines. At times, he'll probably have matchups with Mekhi Lemon. Lincoln Riley does a good job of moving his receivers around the offense. Leonard Moore is going to have his opportunity. And I know that he also remembers the game last year in Los Angeles where his individual performance was good. But Leonard Moore strikes me as somebody where, hey, us as a unit, we're not there. There are things that I could have done better too. I know he also remembers the secondary's performance last year, giving up over 300 passing yards to Jaden Maeva last year. So my second game record on defense, for the simple fact of your dudes got to be dudes, Leonard Moore is going to have to be one of those this weekend, man.
That's exactly why I'm going with Drake Bowen as my number 2 game record. Look, again, considering the weather and how we expect it to be, USC is not going to stop throwing the football, but they've been relying on the run a lot this year. They're averaging over 220 rushing yards per game. The run game was a big part of what they did against Michigan last week. That's not going to be any different now, especially with the weather the way it's going to be. And it's not just the rain, it's the wind gusts. And so they're gonna try to run the football, and that was already going to be part of what they do, and they're going to do it even more now. And you need your middle linebacker to have a big day. And for Drake Bowen, it's not just what you do, but you've got to get everybody lined up. You've got to make sure everybody knows what's going on. You have a big role in everybody kind of doing their job the right way. And he's going to have to play a big role in that. And so, but then also he's going to have to be a force against the run, in my opinion. He's going to have to be a force in the pass game as well. So as a blitzer, you need Drake Bowen to have a big. He's a captain. He's a set 2-year starter. I think he's an outstanding player. So in a game like this, and I don't even mean because of the conditions, I just also mean because it's a huge game. You need like you said, your dudes got to play like dudes. You're spot on about Leonard Moore. I feel the same way about Drake Bowen. He's got to be a dude in this game, and Chris Ash has to allow him to be a dude in this game. And you could make the same case with him with the linebackers, like you made about the interior. It's not just Drake. It's also Kingston. It's Jaden Ausberry, Jalen C. They all got it mad for him. They all got to step up and make plays. But at the end of the day, you need the leader in the room to set the example, set the tone. And I think he did that against NC State last week. Like they tried to test Drake early in the game, and he said, not today. And so you're going to need him to do that again this week. And look, you got a bye week coming up next week. So you're letting it all hang out. I mean, you're letting it all go. You got a couple days to rest after this game. And I think Drake Bowen's going to bring that to the table. So he's my number 2.
I love that pick. I was struggling trying to find one linebacker, and from some of my I didn't want half of my game records to be like groups, even though it is true, especially in a matchup like this. But I love the Drake Bowen pick. He was definitely going to be one of mine. If my last guy, and I'm pretty sure you guys know where I'm going with this, the last game record has to be Christian Gray. I understand, and some of it's just purely for the story arc. I went back and forth between Christian Gray and Dallas Golden and or Devontae Smith, whoever lines up at nickel. But I think the storyline with Christian Gray is a little bit too enticing for me. He got picked on last year a lot in this game. He was targeted 12 times, gave up 8 receptions for $130 and 2 touchdowns. A lot of the fans' wavering, I guess you could say, commitment to Christian Gray started in the USC game last season. And yes, it's looked like he's turned some things around. We're seeing the Christian Gray of old. But again, context matters. We're seeing the Christian Gray of old against NC State and against Boise State. Now it's time to do it against the team that gave you a lot of fits last season, a team that is openly picked on you. And now it's time for him to be that guy. A lot of people in the offseason said Leonard Moore right now is their best corner. But Christian Gray has the opportunity to be the best guy in the room. And these are the games where you take that leap. NC State has a good passing offense. We ran through the numbers last week. Boise State was an effective offense. Arkansas had a dangerous offense. But in games like this, it's time where you need Christian Gray to be who we thought he was going to be at the start of 2024. So my last game record is Christian Gray, Brian.
Of all the game records I'm picking, you're picking offense, defense, special teams, honorable mentions, everything. That's the one that I hope more than any other comes true. Just for the story part of it, because he is a great kid.
Yeah.
And you'd love to see sort of that redemption arc for Christian Gray. And it also would have a huge impact in the game. I'm going secondary as well, but I'm going Tay Johnson. I think when USC to slow down this USC offense, your safeties have to play well. And if USC's been paying attention to Don Shula the last couple games, they may not want to go at him a ton in certain areas. Don will have to be a big part of it. But I think Tay is going to be put in position to make a lot of plays, and he's going to have to make them. Shut down the run, he's going to have an impact. Handle the tight ends, he's going to have an impact. Helping out over top of Mekhi Lemon, he's going to have an impact. I mean, he's the guy that you most likely will use to help double Mekhi Lemon if that's going to be there. Ball gets thrown up because pressure gets there, as we saw with Xavier Watts last year and the year before that. You know, like people talk about Caleb Williams is going to be having nightmares of Xavier Watts. No, Lincoln Riley is going to be having nightmares of Xavier Watts, and he's thankful that he's not there anymore. Hopefully, Tay can start his own legacy. So I just have a feeling that Tay has been just building and playing well, but there's going to become that breakout game where the nation takes notice. You and I talk. I mean, you remember the shows we were doing back in 2023 before USC about how well Xavier Watts was playing against NC State and some of those other teams. He was playing well, but nobody nationally was talking about Xavier Watts until the USC game. And I'm hoping that Tay can because that's when legacy should start to be kind of formed, right? Is in those big moments. And, I mean, Ricky Waters had a lot of success against Notre Dame. The only play that I definitely will always remember is the punt return against Michigan in the opener. I mean, you think of all the big moments, of all the plays I remember about Rocket, two of my favorite plays were, him getting the deep ball against USC in 88 as a freshman, 1 versus 2, and then the kick return in 1990 against Miami. It's the 2 kick returns against a top 10 Michigan team. I mean, you remember what they do in the big games. I don't remember the 2 kick returns against Rice nearly as much as I remember the 2 kick returns against Michigan. You know what I mean? Like, he did have 2 kick returns against Rice. And that's where I think Tay has a chance to kind of come up big and announce himself that, like, hey, I'm that dude. And they're going to need him. That's the other part of it too, Trev.
No, I love that big games like this is when players are able to cement their legacy. And I know you and I are going to be feeling really, really good about our predictions if a lot of these game records come to fruition. So that is 100% for sure. But folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. But make sure you don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to dive into a big preview for this weekend's games across college football. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. Also, be sure to check out me and Vince tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time on the CFB Nation channel, this week's edition of the Spread Option. Not going to want to miss that one either. Lots of great games to talk about. As always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we are talking college football, man. These are the shows that we love doing. At the end of the day, you and I just like to sit down and talk ball, and that's what we get to do for the rest of the show today. This is another really exciting slate of college football games on this weekend, and I'm excited to dive into it with you. Now, look, we have 5 games to give you guys a preview. We have 5 games to dive into a little bit more than just surface level. We're not going to do a full-on Notre Dame breakdown, but we're talking what's at stake for both teams. We're going to be talking about, who potential, big players might be in this one, and then we're going to give some predictions for it. There's just about 10 or 11 other games that we want you guys to keep your eye on too. But Brian, the first game that we're talking about today is we're going to the SEC. It's a big-time SEC matchup between Brian Kelly and his former Notre Dame defensive coordinator, Clark Lee, who's leading the Vanderbilt Commodores, who are 17th in the country right now. Kickoff is at noon on ABC. And right now, Brian, Vanderbilt, 2.5-point favorites on FanDuel. How about that? So, as Vince likes to say, the Fighting Clark Lees are favored in this one.
Top 10 LSU team, like a top 10 LSU team. I mean, this is to me the most fascinating game of the weekend because there's a weird vibe around LSU. They're ranked 10th. They're 5-1. Their only loss is a 5-point road loss to LSU, and everybody's acting like, to Ole Miss, and everybody's acting like LSU sucks. And I'm like, they don't, because again, as you and I have talked about, people look at your offensive scores, and nobody's talking about what a tremendous job that Bryce Baker has done turning around that defense, which was abysmal 2 years ago. It's all what's happened to Garrett Nussmeier, what's happened to the offense. And so this is your chance, if you're LSU, to kind of shut all that up and say, hey, we've got a shot to go out. Hey, guys, look, stop caring about the score and look at the fact that we keep racking up dubs every week. You know what I mean? And that's what they have. Blake, I always say Bryce Baker. I have no idea why I keep saying Bryce Baker all the time. It's Blake Baker. Thank you, big. But you've got that opportunity to go out there and say, hey, look, guys, just shut up. It doesn't matter if we win ugly. There's no style points. We keep winning in the SEC, and we're going to be a playoff team. But at the same time, you also have to ask yourself, well, as the competition ramps up, are you going to be able to win games 20-13 all the time? And that's what's interesting. And you look at the rivalry of this, Trev. LSU leads the all-time series 25-7. They've won 10 straight and 14 of the last 15. The last time Vanderbilt beat LSU, you were -7 years old. It was 1990. And the last time they won before that was 1957. So this is a historic opportunity for Vanderbilt. So for LSU, it's a chance to kind of shut everybody up and be like, look, I don't care what the margin of victory is. You guys didn't care when Georgia was beating teams 17-14. You didn't cry about when Alabama was beating Tennessee 12-10 or whatever it was, and you needed Terrence Cody to block 2 kicks. Why do we have to, always why can't we talk about the defense? That's the narrative you're hoping to create if you're LSU with a win in this game. And it shuts everybody up. Like, hey, we're legit, we're good. We went on the road, beat Vandy, something that Bama couldn't do last year, and we're going to be fine. Because the offense is eventually going to figure it out, and the defense is going to have to carry it. But at the same time, that's what LSU needs. You're going to need your offense to step up and say, hey, welcome to the 2025 season. Because you're not – in today's era, it's legitimate. You can't keep winning 20-10 every week in the SEC. And you can do that when, you're playing South Carolina, who's having a tough year. You can do that when you're playing Clemson, who's having a tough year. You can do that when you're playing Florida, who's having a tough year. But you're getting into that meat of the schedule where you play at Vandy, home against A&M, at Bama, home against Arkansas, at Oklahoma, where in a lot of those games, 20 points isn't going to be enough. And I think this is one of those games where it could be a situation where 20 might not be enough. Can they do to Vandy's offense what Bama did? That's the question. And then for Vandy, Trev, it's are you for real or not? Like, that's the big question for me with Vandy. Is I know that they're a great story, and the win over South Carolina and Virginia Tech looks good, but those at the time, but those wins don't look as good now because those aren't very good teams. And then you played Bama, and you played them tough, but they ended up pulling away and beating you 30-14. This is a chance for Vandy to say, no, we're real, we're legit. And so that's what makes this fascinating. I mean, who had this game when Clark Lee was hired, who was like, he's going to go against his old boss in a battle for playoff positioning in October? Who thought that when he got hired? Tremendous job by Clark Lee. But then also there's the protege versus the former boss type of angle too, which is fascinating. So I'm looking forward to this game. It's probably my most intriguing game of the weekend. But both teams, the loser, you're in a real precarious spot with a tough schedule down the stretch where you can't lose again. The winner puts a big old notch on their belt as they prepare their playoff resume. What do you got to score on this one, Trev? Any more thoughts on the matchup first? Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good, man. You're excited to keep talking some games. I get it, bro. I get it. Look, this is one of the very few matchups that we've previewed so far in college football that it's strength on strength and weakness versus weakness. A lot of it has been strength versus weakness, who plays the cleanest football. In this one, the strength of Vanderbilt's team is their offense. The strength of LSU's team is their defense. The weakness for Vanderbilt's their defense. And so far this season, the weakness for LSU, as crazy as it is their offense. You talk about Vanderbilt, and I agree with you completely. The win over South Carolina doesn't mean as much now. You get into the conversation of, who's Vanderbilt beaten? Who's LSU beaten? This is the prove it game. Who are either of these teams? Yes, the win in week 1 in the other Death Valley at Clemson seemed awesome at the time. Well, now we know what Clemson is, and at the end of the day, LSU won by 7 against a team that probably you should have beaten by at least double digits. I think that's fair to say. You beat Florida by 10. We know what Florida is right now. You lost to Ole Miss on the road by 5. You beat South Carolina at home by a lesser margin than what Vanderbilt did on the road. So this is one of those where it's like, okay, who is more of who here? So this matchup is going to be really, really interesting. I'm with you. Again, we're going to find out if LSU can stop a mobile quarterback. Right now, they're 1 for 2. They did a pretty good job against Lenora Sellers. They did not do a good job against Trinidad Chambliss. So this one is going to be pretty up in the air, but I do have a score prediction for you.
Let me say one thing before we get to that, too. I give Brian Kelly a hard time, and it's deserved. And I remember how his coaching tree started with some of the guys that got head coaching jobs early on. Jeff Quinn failed at Buffalo. Charlie Molnar was a disaster at Ole Miss, things like that. But you look at recently, Chuck Martin's done a great job for over a decade at Miami of Ohio. The job Mike Elko's doing at Texas A&M, the job that Clark Lee's doing at Vanderbilt, and the job that Marcus Freeman is doing at Notre Dame. They're all guys that worked for Brian Kelly and worked for him, not in a way that led to their jobs for all of them, but it did for Marcus Freeman and it did for Clark Lee. They went from Notre Dame to their current jobs. Mike Elko went on a little bit of a different path, but obviously the Notre Dame job was part of that path. So I do think that part of it is something that you have to give him a little bit of credit for. But now you hope that okay, I didn't do too good of a job helping this guy to build this guy because you need to get that win. But I do want to say that because I always hammer on Brian Kelly all the time. And again, it's deserved. But I think you have to look at the fact that he's had a lot of former coaches in recent years from Notre Dame that have gone on to be pretty darn good head football coaches so far. And 3 of his head football coaches, his last 3 defensive coordinators at Notre Dame, are head coaches for the number 5, the number 13, and the number 17 teams in the country. It's not a bad job. It's not a bad job. But do you think one of his protege gets that dub on him this year like Mike Elko did last year? Or do you think Kelly gets one back?
No, I have the Commodores in this one. I have Vanderbilt at home. A couple of the reasons why. And no, this isn't disdain for Brian Kelly I don't have any beef with LSU, but I think Diego Pavia is, again, I said it against Alabama, but I think he's just one of those quarterbacks that can get it done. A lot of people wrote them off after they lost to Alabama. It's like they're fine, but they're not that great. LSU has also struggled historically the last couple seasons, especially under Brian Kelly, in ranked road games. They have. I mean, again, like I said, I know they beat Clemson on the road this year. We know what that team is now. The last meaningful road win they got over a ranked team, you kind of have to go back to Ole Miss in 2023. And so this hasn't been the forte of Brian Kelly in his coaching career. I mean, and that honestly goes back to what he did at Notre Dame. Ranked road games were not a specialty of his. I think Vanderbilt's going to play in a game like this. The thing that makes them so dangerous is I think they play every single week in a game like they have nothing to lose because they know how good they can be, but there's still a little bit of that, guys, we're Vanderbilt, and so I think they get it done this week. I think LSU's offensive struggles continue, and I think that Diego Pavia has quite the game.
Trev, I'm getting that construction in the background, so I didn't hear. Did you give a score for the game?
No, I'm sorry. I have Vanderbilt winning 27-24. I think it's close.
Yeah, I have it actually by the same exact score. I have 27-24. But I have 27-21 Vanderbilt is what I had. So we see this game very close. And I think it's going to be a late score. Like I could see LSU scoring to go up 21-20 and then Vanderbilt going down and winning it. So, I think it's going to be a good football game. I think LSU's offense looked like it started to show some signs of life against South Carolina. They only scored 20, but they moved the ball better. They were over 6 yards of carry, had 420 yards of offense. But I don't think South Carolina's defense is very good. I think this defense will be a little bit tougher, but I just think the mobile quarterback aspect of it, there's just a lot of things that I think play in Vanderbilt's favor. I like the Commodores at home 27-21. I won't be shocked if LSU wins this football game, but you got to make a pick, and I'm going with the home team. If it was at LSU, I'd pick LSU.
We see that the same. All right, Brian, game 2 that we are going to talk about today. We're sticking in the SEC top 10 matchup between the number 5 Ole Miss Rebels on the road in Athens. Again, or is this in Athens or is this the neutral site game? No, this is in Athens, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the Florida game's the one that's a neutral site game, yeah.
That's right. So, number 5 Ole Miss on the road in Athens against number 9 Georgia. 3:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Right now, Georgia is 7.5-point favorites on FanDuel. Right now, over the higher-ranked Ole Miss Rebels, you get a little bit of a bump for being the home team. But Brian, this is another big one. And I think it's another one that's a little bit more. Would you say that you know a little bit more about Ole Miss in this game or a little bit more about Georgia going into this game?
Definitely a lot more about Georgia. I mean, Georgia's much more battle-tested coming into this game. They've got the loss to Alabama. It was a hard-fought game. They've had to play Tennessee. They had to have a tough road win last week over Auburn, thanks to some officiating, I think helped them with that. But I think Georgia's much more battle-tested, even though that Ole Miss is ranked higher. I'm not impressed with Ole Miss this year. I'm really not. I think if they were 6-0 and in the Big 12, they're not even sniffing the top 10 right now. I mean, they had an ugly win over Kentucky. They had to come from behind to beat Kentucky. They barely beat Arkansas, and Arkansas had a shot at the end of that game to win it. Had a sloppy win over LSU that I think was more about LSU kind of not just being very good on offense. And then they barely beat Washington State last week. Like, they're just not a great football team. And Georgia's not a great football team either. I just think they're battle-tested. I think they're more talented. So I think this – and also you're going to have a little bit of a ticked off Georgia. The one coach that does a great job of we're going to kind of, make up for what happened to us last time is Kirby Smart. It doesn't always work, but I think that the whole redemption thing against Bama is why that game was even as close as it was. I'll be honest with you. And I think the loss to Ole Miss and the way they lost, like they got whooped by Ole Miss last year. I mean, Ole Miss was clearly the better team on the field against Georgia last year. I just don't think that's the case this year. This Georgia team, this Ole Miss team has just not impressed me. I look at it and I just think the physicality from Georgia on both sides of the line. And again, this is not a vintage Georgia team either. So I think that you can throw on Georgia. That's the one thing that gives Ole Miss maybe a little bit of hope. But honestly, I don't know that I've been really blown away with how Ole Miss is throwing the football the last couple of games. I mean, they're putting up numbers, but it's just kind of like some of it's like hollow numbers. Like yeah, you're putting up numbers, but you're not really moving the ball consistently. Threw for over 300 yards against LSU, only scored 24 points. Threw for over 250 last week, scored 24 points. I mean, it's a lot of system yards, not impact yards. And they're going to have to figure that out. And they're going to have to find a way to run the football. in this game, because if it's going to be one-dimensional, then I think that's going to play into Georgia's hands. You're going to have to find a way to keep them balanced. So, and then I just think Georgia beats them in the trenches in this game. I do. I think Georgia's a physical football team. They're not as talented as they've been, but I think they're a physical football team. That's really what I see in this matchup, Trev. But if you're Ole Miss, you have a chance to silence people like me that think you're not that good, that think you're only ranked as high because you're in the SEC. You haven't actually beat anybody great, because I don't think LSU's that great. You got outplayed by Arkansas in a lot of ways. I haven't been in Kentucky, same thing. I mean, if Kentucky didn't shoot themselves in the foot like 3 different times, maybe they beat Ole Miss. other than the Tulane win, I just haven't been blown away with Ole Miss so far this year. Well, what's at stake for Ole Miss in this game? Shut everybody up and show that you're a legit team. I remember watching Ole Miss last year, even after the loss, Kentucky, saying like, dude, when that team's on, they can beat anybody. And I just don't feel that way about this year's Ole Miss team. But they're scrapping in ways that last year's teams didn't do. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm sitting there talking about you barely won this, you barely won that. Well, look, that's actually kind of a credit to the job Lane Kiffin is doing, that they find ways to win. I just think that as their schedule gets a little bit tougher over the next month and a half, that they're not going to be able to win as many of those games. And I don't see this being a blowout. Like, anything could happen, but I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I just don't think that they've got the firepower. And for Georgia, I think this is kind of I think we know a lot about Georgia. This game's going to solidify that, because if they are the team I think they are, they'll pressure the quarterback, and then they'll slow down the pass game enough to keep their points down. If they're not the team that I think they are, then I could see Ole Miss throwing the ball a lot more in this game, and because they have good receivers, not like last year's, but they have good receivers, and maybe they could struggle a little bit defending the pass, which then gives Ole Miss a chance to win this game, because I don't think you want to get into a shootout with this Georgia team. With all due respect to Tennessee, that's more of a Tennessee problem. Like, it's in their head that they can't beat Georgia. I don't know that Georgia wants to get into shootouts every week. And so they're going to have to be able to handle the pass a little bit, Trev. How do you see this, and what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I think the quarterbacks are going to be an X factor in this matchup. I do agree with you. I think that Georgia's going to do a good job of trying to stop Ole Miss's run game. Quan Lacey's been impressive this season. He has 8 rushing touchdowns. He has 587 yards, only averaging 4.7 yards a carry, though. Logan Diggs has been fine as a rotational guy. I know he's been banged up at times this year. But the X factor for me in both of these games are the quarterbacks. For Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss has been impressive this season, especially knowing that he started this year as the backup. I am willing to look at the Washington State game last week and say that it was a trap game for Ole Miss. I am. You came off of a big win. At the time, you had LSU at home. They were the 4th-ranked team in the country. You get a big win, and you're looking ahead to Georgia on the road, and you let Washington State slip by you. I think that is about as classic of a trap game moment that you can have. But, again, this is a very short leash that I'm giving Ole Miss, because if you come out and lay an egg against Georgia, it's like, oh, okay, that's just who you are. So what version of Ole Miss are we going to see in this game? And then for Georgia, it comes down to Gunnar Stockton. He has not really impressed me that much this season. I might be in the minority in that, but I think he's been very okay. There's a lot of talk about, Georgia's rebuilt receiving core, and they're doing great and all this other stuff. I mean, he had 130 passing yards against Alabama. He didn't look great in their games early in the season against Marshall and God, is that Appalachian State? There's no way. Austin Peay, excuse me. He hasn't thrown touchdown passes in 2 of his games. He's taken care of the football well. I think he's just been okay. So if Gunnar Stockton can be a game changer in this game, that's why I like this matchup from a quarterback perspective. Can Trinidad Chambliss make enough plays, or can Gunnar Stockton make enough plays and then rely on their supporting cast to fill in the blanks? Yeah. I think that's going to be really interesting.
It is. And the other interesting aspect of this matchup, Trevor, is if Ole Miss can win this game, does that mean that we are seeing a little bit of a shift in the SEC? If you look at Georgia holds a 33-13 all-time lead over Ole Miss. From 1997 to 2012, Georgia won 10 straight games. Because remember, they used to be East and West in the SEC. They didn't play every year. But Ole Miss has won 2 of the last 3, counting a game in 2016. It's really it's 1-1. Georgia beat you at their place 2 years ago. You beat them at your place last year. If Georgia wins, it's like, okay, Georgia being Georgia. If Ole Miss wins, you got to say, hey, man, Lane Kiffin's 2-1 against Kirby Smart. Are we seeing Ole Miss? So I think ultimately, kind of you think more about this matchup, this could be the kind of statement win that Lane Kiffin says, hey, we're not that up and down team we used to be. We're a legit SEC powerhouse. And a loss says you're still same Ole Miss.
No, I agree. I'm going to be interested to see if Georgia's defense can defend a mobile quarterback. I don't think that gets talked about enough either. I mean, shoot, even Ty Simpson in that game, I know he only rushed for 12 yards, but I mean, he rushed for 12 yards and a touchdown. And Trinidad Chambliss is significantly more mobile than what Ty Simpson is. Not that Simpson's a stiff, but that's kind of the game changer in this one. I've seen a Georgia defense shut down running backs and then let a quarterback kind of run a little crazy on their defense. And I saw it with significantly better talent on last year's defense that happened compared to this year's defense. So this one's going to be interesting. I'll give you my score prediction for this one. And I'm calling it an upset per what the spread is, but I know that the higher ranked team. I have Ole Miss winning a close one, kind of an ugly one at home. I have them winning 24-20 on the road against Georgia.
Wow. I'm digging that, Trev. I hope that you're right. You said 24-21?
24-20.
20. I have 24-20 as well, but I have Georgia winning this game. Get out of my head, Trevor. No, I have same score. I think everything plays out the same way you do. Low scoring, defense. I just have Georgia winning. Georgia's not an easy team to beat at home, and I just have a hard time with the idea of Kirby Smart losing a second home game in conference in a year. That's going to make some Georgia people be like, what's going on right now? I'm not saying like hot seat. I just mean like, dude, what's going on right now? But, yeah, I have USC. I have Georgia winning 24-20. When a game's that close, you can see it going other way. I think if you're correct, it'll be because they struggle with the mobile quarterback. That's the part, like your analysis was great. That's the part that if your prediction is accurate, that'll be the deciding factor in this game. But I like Georgia at home 24-20.
Yeah, Trinidad Chambliss's legs is one to keep your eye out on, and maybe something that we talk about tonight on the spread option. Just a little nugget for you. That might make an appearance for sure. All right, Brian, game 3 that we're talking about here. We're switching gears. We're going over to the Big 12. Interesting matchup in the Big 12. Number 7, Texas Tech, the Red Raiders on the road against the 4-2 Arizona State Sun Devils, who have Sam Leavitt back this Saturday. Kickoff is at 4 p.m. on Fox. Right now, Texas Tech is 7.5-point favorites, and the over-under is set at 51.5 on FanDuel. I think this game is a little bit more interesting for the fact that Sam Leavitt is back because it's number 7 versus an unranked team. But we talked in the preseason, the Big 12 is the Wild West, literally and kind of figuratively. But I think that adds to the magnitude of this matchup. I think this is going to be a fun one.
Trev, it's so hard to like. If you're just going to go on paper and you look at Arizona State stats, you're thinking they don't have a shot in this game. Texas Tech won the matchup last year. They have a 3-2 all-time lead the series 3-2. Won the game last year. They played in a couple bowl games. And you look at Texas Tech and you're like, boy, this is a team that's outscoring opponents 47.5 to 12.2. They've been dominant playing football. You look at Arizona State and they're outscoring opponents right now. 26 to 20 points per game, and they're giving up 24.7 points per game. Big part of that is the fact that they gave up 42 points last week in an absolute beatdown at the hands of Utah. But it's hard to really look at that game with any kind of Jeff Sims is awful. I mean, he's terrible. He averaged 3.3 yards per attempt. That offense was going to do nothing. And so like when you have to replace Sam Leavitt with Jeff Sims, you're not only taking a downgrade at quarterback, you're also taking a downgrade at receiver. In that Jordan Tyson now can't impact the game the same way he normally does with Jeff Sims at quarterback. Is that going to be enough for Arizona State to kind of get on track this week? Because here's the thing, they're going to have to score to beat Texas Tech on the road. I mean, at home. Like, you're not going to win, in my opinion, a 20-17 game. You're going to have to score. And can they do that against a Texas Tech team that's playing really good football? Like, they just keep waiting for reality to set in for Texas Tech. And guess what? I think maybe this is the new reality. Because you look at what they did to Utah, beat them 34-10, pulled away in the second half. I mean, Trev, Utah has not played another close game. They beat UCLA 43-10. They beat Cal Poly 63-9. They beat Wyoming 31-6. They beat West Virginia 48-14. They beat Arizona State 42-10. They've annihilated everybody. And then they got beat 34-10 at home by Texas Tech. And, you know, that just kind of shows me like this Texas Tech team isn't just good at home. They travel. And they're good everywhere. And, you know, but as you said, man, this league is so weird. Texas Tech's the best team in the league. They're killing everybody. And then there's just going to be that one game where you're just like, wow, didn't see that one coming. Is this the game? I don't know. But when you look at it, Trev, the opportunities for Texas Tech to lose a game are growing like smaller and smaller at this point in time. I mean, you know, they're 6-0. They play at Arizona State. Then they've got the rest of their schedules: home games against Oklahoma State, BYU, and UCF, and then road games at Kansas State and West Virginia. You get through this game, you're in a pretty good place to make a playoff. If you lose this game, you have to run the table to get in, because I don't know that the Big 12 is going to be a 2-team league this year. Like, they're just keep beating each other up. But there's a lot. And then for Arizona State, you have a lot of momentum from what you did last year. And you've lost a good chunk of that momentum because you just haven't looked good this year. They're 4-2, but, you know, lost to Mississippi State, beat Utah. I think the Baylor and TCU wins are very good wins. They were kind of ugly, low-scoring, 3-point wins. You know, are they going to be able to kind of get that big win over a big team? I don't care what the score is, to kind of give them some of the momentum back that they need to kind of say, hey, we are one of the best teams in the Big 12. Because Arizona State's absolutely in the Big 12 title hunt and becomes the favorite if they win this game, because, yes, they have 2 losses, but one of those losses is out of conference. You know, and I think Texas Tech is the last team in the league that hasn't lost. Am I correct on that? I think everybody else
in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think everybody else has at least has one conference loss. BYU, that's right.
BYU
hasn't lost
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati hasn't lost a conference game either. Wow.
Nope, they're both on all 3 of them.
So all 3-0, and then you have 4 teams in the league with 1 loss. So if Arizona State can win this game, they're right in the mix. If they lose this game, they're going to need even more help down the stretch than they did last year. And so it's really a huge game for both teams. If you're Texas Tech, you are in big time pole position if you win this game.
What version of Arizona State are we going to see, Brian, on Saturday? That's the biggest question. Are we going to see the Arizona State team that battled Texas into overtime in the playoffs last year? And yes, I understand they don't have Cam Scadaboo anymore, but a lot of pieces returned, and they didn't have Jordan Tyson in that game. We're going to see the Arizona State team that went on the road against Baylor and picked up a win, that beat and upset really a ranked TCU, now they're ranked. Actually, I think they were ranked at the time, TCU team. You know, what version of Arizona State are we going to get? Because here's what I know. Texas Tech has been absolutely beating people to sleep. I mean, it's their win against Utah showed me a little something, but I'm glad you talked about some of their other scores, because you could make the argument that Texas Tech is yet to play in a competitive game. It's not like they've kind of pulled like you know, they haven't pulled what some other coaches like to do and just add on points, but like, we actually won by 30. And it's like, if you watch the game, you won by 12, and then you poured it on in the fourth quarter. Texas Tech has been annihilating people. The key for Arizona State is if you're going to be able to run the football. That's kind of been their biggest thing in some of these games. And Texas Tech has done a good job of limiting opposing teams' run games. If I'm Sam Leavitt, especially coming off of an injury, I'm hesitant to run against this Utah defense or this Texas Tech defense, especially for what they did to Devin Dampier, who's a better runner than what Sam Leavitt is. They shut him down. So if Arizona State has any hope of winning this game, you got to make it ugly. You got to make it just a slugfest. It's punch, counter punch. It's who lands the last haymaker. That's kind of Arizona State's chance to win this. Now, the good news is you kind of have a team with that experience in those types of games, and a head coach that I think is pretty good at getting it, you know, taking some heavy ones on the chin, because Kenny Dillingham is a coach that is just absolutely, I mean, his team was picked to finish last in the league last year. They ended up winning it. Nobody gave them a fool's chance to compete with Texas. They sent them to overtime in really the only competitive quarterfinal game last year in the playoffs. So what version of Arizona State are we going to see? Some of that's going to feed into what my prediction is for this one, Brian. But yeah, this one is very, very interesting to talk about. But Texas Tech is absolutely hot right now. Really
Agreed.
hot.
How do you see this one playing out, Trev?
I have Texas Tech winning this one. I have them winning 34-20, but I have them being the last ones to score. You don't have 30.
31-20. 31-20. Very close. Very close.
Yeah.
You have Texas Tech being the last one to score?
Yes.
I had it the other way around. I think Arizona State they haven't scored over 30 points in a while, and this Texas Tech defense is very good. I would love to see Arizona State upset Texas Tech. But I haven't liked the look of Arizona State this year. I haven't. I think they're closer to being 3-3, 2-4 than they are to being 6-0. I haven't liked the look of this team. I would love to root for the upset, but I have Arizona State winning 31-20 I have Texas Tech winning 31-20, and I have Arizona State scoring last in this game. So I don't know it'll be overly close. I hope I'm wrong. But yes, you missed Jeff Sims last week, but you know what's really bothering me is how much Utah ran all over Arizona State last week. Because up until that point in time, they had been pretty good in run defense, but they also hadn't played anybody that really likes to run the ball. Last week was the first time they played a really physical team that likes to run the football. And it didn't look good, Trev. It didn't look good at all. And Texas Tech's a team that's averaging 232 rushing yards a game. They're coming off of, they ran for 207 against Houston, 372 against Kansas. They're a team that can run the football and pound the football. And Utah, I can't get that out of my head. Like, I understand why their offense are terrible. Jeff Sims is terrible. He's just not a good quarterback. But they're watching Utah run all over that defense. Almost, I think it was like 275, 276 rushing yards, something like that. I can't get that out of my head. And that's why I think Texas Tech like you said, beating teams to sleep. That's exactly how I think this game is going to go. I think they're going to pound Arizona State into submission. That's what I think is going to happen. Which is what they did to Utah. That's what they did to Utah.
I will say this, that makes it interesting. USMA 87 brought it up in the chat. Baron Morton is questionable to play in this game. Mm-hmm. He's day-to-day. So that doesn't affect that affects my final score prediction, but I do still have Texas Tech winning, but that definitely makes it interesting for sure.
The thing for me, Trev, about that is if he hadn't already dealt with some of this stuff, I would maybe be a little bit more nervous about it.
Sure.
But he got hurt kind of early against Utah. And they had to bring in Will Hammond off the bench, and Will Hammond played great. He came off the bench against Utah, went 13 of 16 for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns against Utah. So, he's placed on 57 passes this year. You are correct. Baron Morton's their best quarterback, but it helps that your backup has already been in situations where he's had to step in and play in an even bigger game. This is also on the road. It was at Utah. So I think that helps a little bit, but they've got a better shot at winning with Baron Morton, their quarterback. But I look back and say, can Arizona State stop the Texas Tech ground game? That's the question. And based on what I saw against Utah, I don't know that that's going to go real well. And that's really where I'm at.
All right, Brian, it's the third Saturday in October, which means that Tennessee and Alabama play this weekend. That's what their rivalry is called. I had to look it up. I didn't know if it had a name. So like the Iron Bowl or the game or, So third Saturday in October, number 11 Tennessee is on the road down in Tuscaloosa against the number 6 Alabama Crimson Tide. Right now, Alabama is favored by 8.5 points on FanDuel, and the over-under set at 58.5. Kickoff is at 7:30 p.m. on ABC, which, by the way, ABC has a loaded slate of games, by the way. They get LSU at Vandy at noon. They get Ole Miss at Georgia at 3:30, and then the Tennessee-Alabama game at night. So, sidebar, but ABC is going to be absolutely loaded with games. But Brian, third Saturday in October, Tennessee, Alabama should be a good one.
Yeah, I think it could be a good game. It's a big game, certainly a big game, Trev. Tennessee's ranked number 11. I'll be honest. I'm curious how you feel about this. I think Tennessee being ranked 11th is simply because they're an SEC team. This is a team that's coming off back-to-back 7-point wins over Mississippi State and Arkansas in games they honestly could have lost both games. Their defense is struggling. They've given up at least 31 points in 3 of their last 4 games. The only exception was giving up 24 points to a UAB team who has since fired their football coach. And you're playing an Alabama team that's hot. And the other part, too, is I look at Alabama and I see Alabama being a more tested football team. Tennessee's played 1 game this year against a really good opponent. Syracuse is a nice team. Mississippi State's an improved team. Arkansas is an improved team. They haven't played anybody like Bama, in my opinion. And Georgia's a very good team, but Bama's a different type of very good. And that's where I think that Tennessee could be in trouble in this game. And then if you're Alabama, you're cruising right now. You're certainly, you're rolling. You beat Georgia on the road. You're coming off of a hard-fought win at Missouri. You had a hard-fought win over Vanderbilt. You've got 3 straight wins, 2 of them on the road. You beat Georgia on the road, Missouri on the road, beat Vandy. So you're thinking their battle tests are going to be ready to go. But then the other part of it is, they're also going to, have a better chance of being kind of worn out because they've had such 3 grueling games in a row where, Tennessee's winning shootouts every week. So there's a lot of different angles to look at this, Trev. Just looking at the series, I love the series. Bama right now leads at all time, 60 to 40-8. They won 15 straight games from 2007 to 2021. Tennessee, however, has won the last 2 of 3. And so they obviously beat Alabama last year. We all remember that game. Trev, you and I have referenced that game multiple times, watching Jalen Milroe just struggle to complete passes down the field. But Tennessee won a low-scoring game last year, 24-17. Here's an interesting nugget, Trev. The games in Tuscaloosa, Tennessee has not beaten Alabama in Tuscaloosa since 2003, which was year 1 under Mike Shula. That was an Alabama team that went 4-9. So it's been a minute since Tennessee. And so when you talk about what's at stake for Tennessee, it's a program-defining game for Josh Heupel in that if you win, it is. If you lose, it's just kind of you're still Tennessee. It doesn't define your program if you lose. It just kind of further defines it. You already have established yourself as a team that can't beat Bama on the road, that can't beat Georgia. And, now you get a chance to kind of reverse that. You almost did it against Georgia. You almost did it. And then you made me look bad again because I picked Tennessee to win again like an idiot. And for a while there, I'm thinking, I'm going to get this one right, but I got it wrong again. Now you get a chance to show that, hey, look, we aren't just capable of beating Bama at home. We can beat Bama on the road as well. I think Tennessee needs this kind of win to cement themselves. I think if they lose this game, Trev, I don't know that Tennessee is viewed the same way they were last year, when it comes playoff time. And you're looking at the rest of their schedule. They've got Kentucky on the road. They've got Oklahoma at home, New Mexico at home, at Florida home against Vanderbilt. If they lose this game, there's a chance that the only team that's going to be ranked that they beat at the end of the year is Vanderbilt. I don't know that Oklahoma's going to be ranked at the end of the year. Matter of fact, I don't think that they will be ranked at the end of the year. If we're being honest about that one, you're not going to have the same resume you had a year ago. And I think Steve Angeli getting hurt at Syracuse has hurt them as well because I think Syracuse would probably be a better football team right now, record-wise, if Steve Angeli doesn't get hurt. And, so you'd have that blowout win over Syracuse, and, maybe Syracuse is a 4-2 team right now. And you need this game to build a legitimate playoff resume because if there's a bunch of 10-2 teams at the end of the year, Tennessee's going to be on the downside of what their resume looks like. And so I think you need a game like this to kind of get that back, especially since you lost to Georgia at home. You need to get this one back, this road game back and get a win. But I just don't know that they're capable of doing that. This defense has really struggled this year, and you're going against an Alabama offense that's pretty talented. And not only are you not a very good defense, Trev, I think it goes beyond that. You're not a very good defense because you can't stop people from throwing on you. and you're about to face you gave up 371 passing yards to UAB. You gave up over 300 passing yards to Gunnar Stockton. What is Ty Simpson about to do to you? That would be my fear if I'm on the Tennessee side of this, Trev. How do you see this one?
The same exact way. Look, man, I mean, Tennessee is going up against an offense that couldn't even be bothered to run the football. Kalen DeBoer's not dumb. I know he's going to go into this game. He's like, hey, let's try to get Jam Miller going. Let's try to get this Riley kid going. They have Ty Simpson, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton. You can't let this be the game that Ryan Williams figures it out. I know he's been a little banged up, but this can't be the game where that happens. And look, all signs of this game are pointing in the direction of Alabama. You get the revenge tour thing going on. They remember that loss 24-17 last year in Knoxville. You get them at home, and you're facing a defense that, unlike Notre Dame's, there was no turnaround. There was no, okay, you let some of these earlier teams kind of get a jump on you. You let Syracuse score 26 in a game that was okay. The Georgia game was what it was. Maybe because that was at a point in time where maybe we just thought that Georgia's offense was, I guess, the masses. I know you and I didn't think this, but the perception-wise, like, hey, maybe this Georgia offense has turned a corner and Gunnar Stockton's turning it on. This new receiving core is, starting to benefit. And then there was just no turnaround from Tennessee's defense. None. You give up 34 to Mississippi State. You give up 31 to an Arkansas team that just fired their head coach. Now, mind you, they still have Bobby Petrino and a very talented group of offensive players. But if you thought Arkansas's offensive talent was really, really impressive, this Alabama team with Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb coming to town are no slouches either. And so that's what feeds into my prediction, man. I actually have Alabama winning this one kind of by a comfortable margin. Here's why. I think that the three straight ranked wins that Alabama has going into this game against Georgia, Vandy, and Missouri, 2 of those 3 are on the road. I think that that's done something for Kalen DeBoer and this team. I think it's given them the confidence that they didn't have last season. And I think it's showing them, hey, we are as good as what we believe we are. I have Alabama winning this one 34-17 in a game that I really don't think is overly that close. I have Alabama really stretching their legs, and they're going to start looking like the team that we thought they were going to look like earlier I hesitate to say earlier in the season. Like Florida State got the jump on them, and then since then they beat UL Monroe to sleep. The game against Wisconsin was a bloodbath, and they've handled business against the 3 ranked teams they faced. So I have Alabama 34-17 in this one, Brian. What about you, man?
If you'd have said something like Bama 44-24 or 41-24, I'd have been like, all right, dude, you've got a bug on my computer. But we finally got one that makes me realize, like, hey, okay, we're not there yet. Did we give score predictions for Arizona State? We did, yeah. Yeah, we did. I'm going 44-24. I think Alabama's offense is just going to, like, having played some good defenses in back-to-back games. Vandy's got a quality defense. Missouri's got a good defense this year. We talked about how good their edge rushers are. And then, obviously we know that Georgia's got a good defense. This Tennessee defense is going to be like, okay, this is like nothing compared to what we faced in the last 3 weeks. And for the flip side for Tennessee is they've struggled to defend the pass, and they're getting kind of ripped up passing in the passing game by teams like Georgia and UAB and Arkansas. They're going to now have to go against Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and Ty Simpson and Isaiah Horton, and it's going to be like, dude, this is rough. I got Bama winning big. I got Bama's offense catching fire, winning this game 44-24. I don't think it's going to be all that close.
Yeah, you and I definitely see that the same. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, Trev, where I just. Tennessee beats Alabama by a touchdown at home last year. 2 years before that, they beat them at home by 3. Last two road games, however, been 34-20, 52-24. Like, they haven't even shown they can even be competitive against Bama and Tuscaloosa. And I think this is a better Bama team than the one they faced. Excuse me, this is a better Bama offense than the ones they faced in recent years. Because the team that beat them 2 years ago, that wasn't a great Bama offense. The one in 23 that made the playoffs, that team got to the playoffs because of Jalen Milroe's legs in the defense. It wasn't because they were this high-scoring, offense, in my opinion. So I think Alabama rolls in this one. I don't think it'll be close. I usually predict close games in these ranked versus ranked matchups, but I think Tennessee's more of a 20-25 team than a 11 team. And I think Bama's a top 5 team. So I'm going Roll Tide in this one.
Brian, the last game that we're talking about, taking a deep dive into, I should say, is the Holy War. Number 23, Utah, 5-1 on the road against the undefeated and 15th ranked BYU Cougars. 8 p.m. kickoff on Fox. Right now, the visiting team, Utah, are 3.5-point favorites on FanDuel. The over-under is set at 49.5. Brian, when you called me yesterday to go over what games we were talking about, I know you were excited to talk about the Holy War, and this is going to be a really, really fun matchup. Really fun.
Yeah, I mean, we're going through the schedule, and we're like, all right, Trev, let's talk about LSU Vandy. Let's talk about Ole Miss Georgia. Let's talk about Texas Tech Arizona State. Let's talk about Tennessee Bama. And they're like, and oh, yeah, let's also do the Holy War. Like, I mean, we didn't even call it Utah BYU. We called it the Holy War. I mean, it says everything you need to know about this game. Utah leads the all-time series 60 wins, 33 losses, 4 ties. Utah won 9 straight from 2010 to 2019. Then they stopped playing every year as there was some conference shifting, and they've played the last 2 times they've played, Trev, since 19 were 21 and 24. BYU won both of those games, including a 22-21 win last year. So it's going to be quite interesting here to see if BYU can win this game. Utah, for their part, needs a big win to try to set up a rematch. Right now, Utah is like, we want a rematch against Texas Tech. That's what they're fighting for. And games like this, now that they're in the same league, are games they need. And then for BYU, I mean, they're an undefeated team that's ranked, 16th, 14th, 15th, and what are they, 15th and 16th, I believe, in the 2 polls. Correct, Trev? They're 15th in the AP. I think they're 16th in the coaches poll. I get maybe they right. 14th, something like that. They're undefeated, and they can't sniff the top 10 right now, where you've got a bunch of one-loss SEC teams that are ranked. Well, why is that? Well, because so far BYU has beaten Portland State, Stanford, East Carolina, Colorado by 3, West Virginia, and Arizona. So yeah, you're not going to be ranked when in the top 10 when Bama's got a loss, but they've also beaten 3 straight ranked opponents. I mean, it's just that's the reality of it. But this is a chance for BYU to say, no, we are legit, right? We can't control our schedule. We are legit. And, beating a team like Utah is the way to do that. And, yeah, it's at home. It's obviously beneficial for you to be at home. But I think it's a good Utah team. And Utah lost to Texas Tech, but they've literally blown out everybody else that they've played. Coming off a 42-10 win over Arizona State. So, I like this matchup. And BYU, they're just scrappy. They fight. They find ways to win. You're just like, yeah, like last week, I'm like, oh, they're going to get beat. The streak's over. Arizona's going to beat them. And they just kept battling. Found a way to take it into overtime and then got the W in overtime. So this is a scrappy football team for BYU that I think you win this game. I think you see them take a jump in the rankings, or at least a jump in perception, to where if they can keep rolling, the playoff committee is going to say, hey, we like this BYU team. Now, the reality is, though, Trev, is the next 5 weeks, next 5 games, because they have a bye week mixed in there, it's going to tell us who BYU is. I don't know that we really know. They're a good team, but are they a top 15 team, or are they a top 30 team? Right now, I'd say, honestly, if I was doing a top 25, if I had one of these 2 teams ranked 15th and one of them ranked 23rd, I'd have Utah ranked 15th and BYU ranked 23rd. Yeah, they got a better record, but Utah is more challenged. They've been more impressive in their wins. And then with BYU, their next 5 games, Trev, they play Utah at home this week. Next week, they travel to Iowa State. Then they have a bye. Then they travel to Texas Tech. Then they host TCU. Then they're at Cincinnati, who's currently ranked, before they end the season against UCF. So this is the time for Kalani Sitake, who's done a great job at BYU the last couple of years, by the way. I mean, starting quarterback gets kicked off the team right before the season, transfers to Tulane, and you start 6-0 with a true freshman quarterback. Like, he's in my top 10 of who are my coach of the year candidates in college football. Right now, he's in the top 10. I don't know if he's going to be there in the next 5 weeks, after the next 5 weeks, but he's done a heck of a job with that team so far. I wonder, now that the competition gets ramped up a little bit in this kind of rivalry game, what does that mean? But I would also argue, Trevor, that this is one of those games, like you talked about this with Notre Dame and USC, and it's a great point. This is one of those games where I don't really care what the record is. I don't care how teams have played coming in. This game takes on a whole different vibe. I mean, last year Utah was 4-8. BYU was a borderline playoff team, and they won by a point, 22-21 in a battle. I mean, pads will be popping this weekend in Provo. They will be popping. That's what you can always expect. I don't know who's going to win. I don't know what the score is going to be, but the one thing I can guarantee is it's going to be a physical football game. It always is between these two teams in recent seasons. So, in Utah, they jump way up the rankings if they win this game. BYU probably falls out of the top 25 if they lose this game. I mean, if Michigan's going to fall out of the top 25 for losing to USC, then BYU should fall out of the top 25 if they lose at home to Utah.
I am so excited. Look, if you like exciting quarterback play, watch this game. Devin Dampier versus Bear Bachmeier is one of the better untalked about storylines going on this weekend. I mean, right now, Bear Bachmeier, he has 15 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Devin Dampier has 16 total touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Both are playmakers with their legs. Both quarterbacks lead their team in rushing touchdowns, and then obviously both quarterbacks lead the team in passing touchdowns as well. But this is going to be a really, really fun game. I talked about the quarterback matchup in the Georgia game between Gunnar Stockton and Trinidad Chambliss. I think this one kind of blows that one out of the water. That one was a little bit more which one steps up. This one will be, okay, who makes the best plays, not who makes plays, who makes the best plays. These are two electric quarterbacks going at it on Saturday night. I'm excited to keep my eye on it because I'm obviously not going to not watch the Notre Dame USC game to watch this one. Unfortunately, this one kicks off at 8 p.m. But this is going to be a really fun matchup to keep track of. This one's going to be tough to predict. Brian, I know you said that you don't know what the final score is going to be. You don't know who's going to win, but do you have a prediction?
I do, yeah. I have Utah winning 27-17. I have them going on the road and winning. Last week kind of showed me a little something about Utah, Trev. We've been talking about on our channel about Devin Dampier since the beginning of the season. And I watched him last week against Arizona State go 7 of 12 for 104 yards. And Utah won by 32. Because he just ran it all over them. And, this is a good BYU team. It is. It's a quality BYU team. I don't think it's a great BYU team. They lost a lot of guys from their team last year. Obviously, the quarterback getting booted off the team hurts. As the competition is ramped up, you see that their defense isn't quite that great. It's a good defense. It's not a great defense. They're a team that's given up over 150 yards rushing the last 3 games. I just think this is a different animal from what they faced in recent seasons. They're going to swarm Utah as best they can. They're going to basically, in my opinion, BYU is going to load the box and say, you're going to have to beat us throwing the football. And I think that Dampier might have some maybe misses on that early, but I think eventually he makes enough plays with his arm to loosen BYU up, and they end up winning this game. I think the bigger thing is I think BYU struggles a little bit to consistently move the ball against the Utah defense. I think that's really what it comes down to for me is I think Utah has a much better defense than what BYU has talent-wise. I think they're both scrappy. They're both well-coached. I just think Utah's got better players. So I like the Utes in this game. What I say, 27-17 in this game. That's where I'm at. What say you, Trevor?
I like that. I also have Utah winning. I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this prediction. It's Thursday. Notre Dame plays football this weekend. I'm in a really good mood. Here's my fun prediction. I have Utah winning 31-30. I think BYU is going to score, pull them within 1 point, and try to go for 2 and not get it. Utah wins on the road. I got that. That sounds like a fun game. I would like to see that unfold. I'd pull it up on my phone when I'm watching the Notre Dame USC game. So that is my fun prediction for this week. I do still have Utah winning. More likely, I absolutely see this game playing out the way that Brian does because I think Utah is going to be able to run the football on BYU. Utah's defense, if we're talking about those indirect matchups, I do think Utah's defense is better than BYU's. Not by a lot, but I do think that Utah's defense is better. But I just wanted to have a little bit of fun with this last prediction.
I will say this, Trev. If you like teams that are well coached, well prepared, and play hard, watch this game because they're both that way. They're both very well coached, very well coordinated, and they play physical, sound football. That's what I'm looking forward to about this game. I can't wait to watch it. Like I said, even as a former quarterback, I usually don't love the physical games, but this is one that I enjoy. It's personal. I mean, and I don't know why. One's a public school, one's a private school. It's wild, but it's going to be a fun one.
All right, Brian, last part of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. We are talking about some other games going on around college football, not taking as much of a deep dive as we did with the previous 5. But again, there's a lot of really, really good football on this weekend. But before we do that, I know yesterday when you and I were going over this, you were driving through the mountains at nighttime. Good for you. You're a braver soul than I am. But last night when you were driving, we were talking on the phone, and you said that you wanted to talk about this week's schedule of games and why, the SEC has the perception as to why they are the best conference. We are under the impression, we do believe that the SEC is the strongest conference, and you think that this week's slate of games is kind of the prime example as to why. So am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah. You got it.
Well, there we go. There's a lot of good games going on this weekend, and some of the ones that we're going to break down are going to show you why. And one of the first ones that I actually wanted to talk about is actually going on tomorrow night, and it's Louisville at Miami. And this one's interesting because on one hand, I've been seeing it on social media, I've been seeing it on the premium message boards. A lot of people go back and forth and talk about they're kind of waiting for Mario Cristobal something.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you have a head coach in Jeff Brom who, for one game a season, is always good to just sneak up on that team. And I thought it was going to be Jeff Brom last year against Miami, and they fell a little bit short. Miami's coming off of a bye week. They had a big emotional win over Florida State the week before down in Tallahassee. And Louisville, I believe, has won their last 2 football games. They're 4-2 in the season. Now, this is a team going in and playing like they have nothing to lose, and they have the opportunity to upset the number 2 team in the country. I think Friday night, Louisville-Miami has the potential to be a pretty good game.
Louisville's 4-1, right?
4-1, excuse me. Yeah, not 4-2.
Yep. And honestly, not that far off. I think they should have lost to Pitt. They should have beat Virginia. It's kind of how it's gone. They're a solid team this year, Trev, but they just haven't blown me away. But they're still sitting here 4-1 with a home game coming up against Miami, where you've got a chance to maybe make some noise, and actually road game against Miami, and you've got a chance to make some noise. Miami just never seems to do well in these Thursday, Friday night games. They just always seem to kind of not play well. I don't know how the crowd's going to be. You're playing a Friday night game. A lot of people are going to be at the high school football games on Friday night. Look, on paper, this game shouldn't be close. It shouldn't. But you're absolutely right, Trevor. It's not about does Louisville match up well against Miami. It's about, is Mario Cristobal going to Mario Cristobal, fair or not? And is Jeff Brom going to do what he does, which is always just kind of get that random great win? I don't think so this week, but that's why we're keeping an eye on this game, because I think we're both picking Miami to win, but we got our eye on it as if there's going to be a crazy upset, I feel about this game kind of remember how I talked about the Virginia game going into Florida State, the Florida State game. And I was like, I don't know who's going to win. I'm not making a prediction. I'm not making a prediction for this one other than I think Miami wins. But I just was like, don't sleep on Virginia in that game. And I kind of feel the same way this one. Don't sleep on Louisville in this game, even though I expect Miami to win.
It's one of those games where, if we'll obviously be up tailgating all day Saturday. Irish Breakdown Tailgate is happening this weekend, Saturday. Follow Brian on Twitter. What is it, at Coach D 7128?
178.
178. Okay, so make sure you follow him on Twitter. We're obviously going to be posting about it on the message boards, but this is one that when we're walking around tailgating and we're up hanging out, having a great time, it wouldn't surprise me if I checked my phone. It's like 2:30 in the afternoon, and I saw that it was 21-21 in the fourth quarter, or it also wouldn't surprise me if Miami was up by 13 in the fourth quarter either. It's that type of game. I could see either one,
Well, yeah. Isn't that game Friday night?
Oh, that is Friday night. That's right. I thought it was. Yeah.
Which makes it even weird because you usually we start our games with like the noon games first. We talk about, that's what I was saying. Like, that's what makes me feel nervous if I'm a Miami fan because, a lot of fans are going to be at high school football games Friday night, not at the Miami game. I don't think they care about Louisville. It's just that weird game where, it's off your schedule. It just has all the makings of an upset. Although I'm not predicting an upset, it's one of those ones that wouldn't shock me. So if we're at the tailgate on Saturday, people are asking, how does Louisville beating Miami impact Notre Dame? It wouldn't shock me if that's a topic of conversation when we're having all those questions. But if you're asking me what I predict, I'm predicting Miami to win. I'm just saying it could be a Braum special. It's going to be interesting. As a Notre Dame fan, you want Miami to keep winning.
Oh yeah,
but this could be one of those weeks.
What other games are you keeping your eye out on, Brian?
There's so many interesting games this weekend, Trev. And, you talk about Louisville and Miami, and another one is Maryland and UCLA. I think this is a fascinating game because you have two teams going in completely opposite directions. UCLA starts the season 0-4, and they're not even close. And you're like, boy, I think Deshaun Foster might be done. I was like, I don't think they're going to fire him in the middle of the season, because he's an alum and all that. And they fired him after 4 games. And I guess that's what happens when you lose to New Mexico by 25 points and you get spanked by Utah at home. And then you go on the road and lose to Northwestern. And then you look at Maryland, and Mike Locksley needs a strong year to secure his job. Start the season 4-0. You beat Northern Illinois by double digits. You beat Florida Atlantic by 32. You beat Towson by 27. You go on the road and beat Wisconsin by 17. And then you're up, I think it was 20-0 on Washington. And you're thinking, all right, Loxley's team is legit. And from that moment on, they have struggled. Obviously, Washington came back and won that football game. And then last week at home, they lost to Nebraska, 34-31. Now, they were competitive in both games, Trev, but Maryland's been prone to be that team over the years, Mike Locksley and before, that they look good for a while and then they fall apart. Is this their fall apart moment, or do they bounce back, travel from one coast to the other coast and bounce back? On the flip side, as bad as UCLA was, then they get a big home win over Penn State where they were at one point in time up 27-7. Then they go on the road, travel out east, and smash Michigan State on the road. So they're going to go like this. Can one team reverse, or are they going to win? And reverse course, or does UCLA win and Maryland's season kind of goes down? And Tim Skinner keeps saying, hey, when you're out there doing your national search, just remember you may not have to go very far because look what we're doing. And, that's what he's battling for. And this is a great chance for him to do that. Because, you look at this UCLA team, Trev, if they don't win this one, they are probably not going to win again. As great of a story as this is, their last 5 games are at Indiana, home against Nebraska, at Ohio State, home against Washington, at USC. There aren't a whole lot of winnable games left on their schedule. They need this one. And on the flip side, if you're Maryland, you also need this game because you fall to 4-3 if you lose, and then your next 4 or 5 games are Indiana at home, at Rutgers, at Illinois, home against Maryland, and then Michigan State on a neutral field. You don't win this game, you're not going to a bowl game. You win this game, you have a shot to be a bowl team. And so there's a lot at stake for Maryland. UCLA, it's more so playing for pride. With the schedule they have, I don't see there's any chance in heck of them making a bowl game. For them to make a bowl game, think about this. For UCLA to make a bowl game, if they win this game, they're going to have to win 3 of their final 5 games against, Indiana, Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, and USC, with the Indiana, Ohio State, and USC games being on the road. The odds of that happening are slim. So it's going to be a fascinating game, but Maryland needs this one way more than UCLA. We'll see who wins. What are some other games you're looking at, Trev?
Well, real quick, the thing that I find interesting about this game, Brian, UCLA is favored.
I know.
On-
I mean, I
FanDuel.
understand that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they're home. Big Ten team, traditional Big Ten teams, and I guess you can kind of put Maryland in the traditional Big Ten team because they've been there for a little bit. And when I mean traditional, I mean like before the Pac-12 merger happened, have not done well going out west. They just haven't. And you're reeling. You've lost 2 straight games at home. You know, like and then you look at what UCLA's done the last 2 weeks. I would favor UCLA as well. I'm actually picking. I think UCLA wins this game. I do.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. Next game, we're flipping the switch and we are going over to the SEC. Number 16, Missouri is on the road against Auburn. This one has storylines written all over it. On one side, you have Missouri, and the conversation is, can you bounce back after a tough loss against Alabama? Missouri is also playing in their first road game of the season midway through October. Different conversation for a different day. And then on the other side, you have an Auburn team where it's just like, okay, what is this Auburn team? Ever since you entered SEC play, you haven't won. You're 0-3 in SEC play. You started off your season on the road against Baylor in an impressive 38-24 win. Obviously, you decimate Ball State and you handle business against South Alabama. You lose to Oklahoma in a game by a touchdown where your offensive line gives up 10 sacks. You lose on the road against Texas A&M by 6, and then you lose against Georgia by 10 at home in a game with a lot of questionable calls. You mentioned it to me that, Auburn was never really able to overcome the overturned touchdown. They let that fester. You had timeout game.
They mentally broke after that. Trev. Like, it was 10-0 out, and Georgia scored the final 20 points. Yes. They were about to go up 17-7, 17-0 in Georgia, and they just never recovered. That's the sign of a poorly coached team with no leadership.
100%. Oh, 100%. But now, you get Missouri, who's playing in their first road game of the season, and I believe this game is at night at Jordan-Hare. So that's another thing that's working in the – if I'm Missouri, I don't love the idea that my first road game is on the road against Auburn, who's been competitive. They haven't won, but they've been competitive in SEC play, and they're reeling after a loss. How does Missouri respond? Can they show that they are a team that can compete in the SEC? Or are we talking about Missouri after this game? It's like, that's Missouri. It's like they'll be competitive, but they're not going to get over that hump. This one is real interesting, Brian. Really interesting.
Yeah. It really comes down to this, Trev. It's simple. How's Auburn mentally? If look, their offense is going to be bad, but I think their defense is really good. And at times, they just seem like a team to me that's on the verge of collapsing, or they're going to come out and get a much needed road win over a ranked team. And look, Auburn's schedule the rest of the way, there's a lot of winnable games on there. They're 3-3 right now. You lose this game, the Hugh Freeze era is basically over. If you lose this game at home, you're going to lose to Arkansas next week. You're going to lose at Vandy. You're going to lose to Alabama. You win this game, you're 4-3. You got Kentucky at home. You got Mercer at home. You're bowl eligible if you just beat Kentucky and Mercer at home. But then maybe you can upset an Arkansas on the road. Maybe you can upset a Vanderbilt on the road. I just think their season is on the verge right now, and just however this game goes is going to tell us which way it goes. I don't have a lot of faith in Hugh Freeze getting this team mentally ready to play. But if he can, then I think Auburn could pull off the upset. If he can't, then I think Missouri could end up going in there and just really burying them in the second half.
If Auburn's offensive line can hold up in this game against a strong Missouri front, I think that gives Auburn a chance. But again, their offensive line gave up 10 sacks to Oklahoma. 10 sacks in a game is absolutely diabolical work. So if Auburn's offensive line can hold up, I think they have a chance, but they can't let Missouri's run game get going. Ahmad Hardy was held out of the end zone for the first time last week against Alabama. I don't know if Auburn's defense is going to be able to do that. I just don't. Next game, Brian, is an interesting one. And I think I at least would be remiss if I didn't mention Penn State in this podcast at least once. But Penn State's on the road at Iowa. Here's what's interesting about this football game. There's been a trend in college football this season of teams right after they let go of their head coach. UCLA fired Deshaun Foster. They immediately won 2 straight, one of them being over Penn State and the other one against Michigan State. Virginia Tech won 2 straight after they fired Brent Pry. They beat Wofford, but then they beat North Carolina State. Pretty impressive. Arkansas fired Sam Pittman. They didn't win, but they lost to number 12 Tennessee on the road 34-31 after a bye week 2 weeks later. So there's been this trend that once you let go of your head coach, the teams have shown that they galvanize around each other. Here's the caveat, though. All 3 of those teams that I mentioned, Arkansas, UCLA, and Virginia Tech, all still had their starting quarterbacks. And unfortunately, you never hope for this for the young man, but unfortunately, Drew Aller's season was cut short. He's had to get ankle surgery. I saw the injury. It was not great. So what takes the day? And unfortunately for them, the week after all of this happens, Penn State has to go play on the road against Iowa, and I believe kickoff is at nighttime. So you're playing against Iowa at night in their home stadium. The strength of their team is their defense, and the area that you've struggled the most has been offensively, and now you're not going to have your third-year starting quarterback under center. What is this going to look like for all the Drew Aller naysayers? Here's your opportunity to go and see what Penn State looks like without Drew Aller at the helm, because there's a lot of people out there that still think that he was the sole problem on that team. It's not Drew Aller's fault that the offensive line is underperforming. It's not Drew Aller's fault that Nicholas Singleton, who was allegedly the second best running back in college football coming into the season behind Jeremiah Love, is now averaging under 4 yards a carry. That's not Drew Aller's fault. So there's a lot of things working in this game. And then for Iowa, it's okay. You've gotten off to a pretty decent season so far. You were the only Big Ten team that's played IU competitively. Can your offense get going a little bit in this game? I will say this. I don't have a final score prediction for this one. I just think it's going to be ugly. Penn State is now, they have an interim head coach. Their starting quarterback is gone, and Iowa still has an offense. So this game is just going to be really ugly, I think.
Ethan Grunkenmeyer is a talented quarterback. He was a highly ranked kid coming out of high school, but this is a tough place to be making your first career start. At Iowa and the circumstances they're in, I don't see the offensive line all of a sudden getting better because Drew Aller's not back there. He was not playing well, but he was also had become the scapegoat. Like that's really what it came down to. I'm curious if they can follow the trend of others. I don't think they do. And for Iowa, look, Iowa is a sneaky playoff contender. Like nobody's talking about Iowa because they have 2 losses. But first of all, only one of their losses right now was out of conference. The rest of their losses, their other loss, because they lost to Iowa State, and then obviously they lost to Indiana in a game, as you mentioned, Trev, they lost by 5. I would argue they were more competitive against Indiana than Oregon. And certainly their defense played better than Oregon's did. They just beat Wisconsin 37-0. They earned a 10-point road win over Rutgers. They should have beat Iowa State, to be honest with you. And you look at the rest of their schedule, they get Minnesota at home after this. They have Oregon at home. They have Michigan State at home. And then the 2 road games are USC and Nebraska. It's slim, but they are going into this game with playoff aspirations because of what they've done so far and what's left on their schedule. If they can pull off a couple upsets, then they could be in there. I don't think that's how it's going to play out, but that's what's on the line for them in this game. And I just don't think Penn State is going to have a shot in this game. I think their offense is going to really struggle to move the ball. The only thing that works in their favor is they could score 16 and win because of Iowa's offense. I mean, that's the problem for Iowa. So we'll see. I don't know what's been more disappointing, their offensive line or their defense this year for Penn State. Because I think part of Nicholas Singleton's problems is the offensive line is not.
Yeah, I think their offensive line has been more disappointing because at least on defense you can point to, and we did have a conversation about it in the preseason. It's like, hey, there's a lot that goes into a Jim Knowles defense. And very rarely do his defenses have success in year one. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that. I think their offensive line has been more of a disappointment because you return so much experience and the same offensive coordinator. And I think the same offensive line coach. So that's a major disappointment because now you're talking about regression, not having to backfill somebody that left.
Yep.
So that one's definitely been disappointing. Brian, next game, Mississippi State on the road in the swamp against Florida. This is, I don't even know if you call it do or die time for Billy Napier because there's been so much coming out about this, but this is a crazy one.
Yeah. I mean, there's stuff coming out that no matter what happens this weekend, they're going to fire him, which is, first of all, how irresponsible, if that's true, How irresponsible of the losers at Florida to leak that publicly. What a disservice you're doing. I don't care about Billy Napier. He's going to be fine. He's a millionaire. He'll find another job. What a disservice you're doing to the football players for the University of Florida. They've got to deal with this going into a football game. It disgusts me. And it just shows the kind of train wreck that Florida is. You know what, Trev? I grew up with Florida being one of those other teams that you root for. I've said this before. I love Steve Spurrier. I loved his quarterbacks. I mean, I just thought he was a brilliant mind. I loved watching his teams of Florida. I didn't like them because I didn't like Urban Meyer, but I loved his teams were physical and they were good. But I honestly have started to root against Florida as a program because their arrogance as a program. Like, you've had 2 stretches where your football team's been really good. 3. One of which was Steve Spurrier as a player. One was Steve Spurrier as a coach, and then the other one with Urban Meyer. Outside of that, you've been a pretty mediocre football program for a long time. And you had the audacity to fire Dan Mullen after he had back-to-back 11-win seasons. Year 3, they play in the SEC title game. They lose a bowl game to Oklahoma, lose the SEC title game by 6, had a really good year, scored a ton of points, and then he struggles next year and you fire him. This is what you get. Now you're a joke of a program. Your leadership at your school is a mess. You try to hire a president that you can't get him in. It's just the leadership of that institution as a whole is terrible. And the fact that you're leaking stuff, if this turns out to be true now, if this is not true, then shame on the people making this crap up. But it just reeks of this is Florida being Florida. Like, that's just kind of how I see it. And why would you do that? If you've made this decision, why not fire them already? Or why not just keep your freaking mouth shut, until you get out of this game, let your players have that chance to go win this football game. You got to bye next week. Fire them and then you got to bye. Why leak this before the game? It's kind of embarrassing. And it's a disservice to the student athletes that allegedly that you care about, which we know they don't. So that's my part of this game. But I would love for Billy Napier to go out with a win. That's part of it, But at the same time, this is also a tremendous opportunity for Mississippi State to earn a big win. They're 4-2, Trev, and one of their losses was by a touchdown to Tennessee. You look right now, 4-2 with a win over Arizona State. They've got Florida on the road this week. They got Texas at home, at Arkansas, home against Georgia, at Missouri, home against Ole Miss. Their slate gets real tough after this. They need this game if they're going to go to a bowl game. They need this win at Florida if they're going to go to a bowl game. And because, maybe then they can pull off an upset. But if you're Florida, maybe you get a chance if you're the players, hey, we want to send our coach out with a W if this is his last game. But it's just a disservice of how they handled that.
I agree completely. Next game, Brian, SMU, the Mustangs on the road against the Clemson Tigers. And this is one that I think some people got blinded by the fact that Clemson beat 2 bad teams by a wide margin. I mean, they outscored North Carolina and Boston College, both on the road, but they outscored them 79-20. And I think that's put some people back into what does Clemson do from here? And they're going up against an SMU team that, again, from their side, they're 4-2. They're 2-0 in the ACC. But all 4 of their wins have been against significantly inferior opponents. Mm-hmm. You beat East Texas A&M. You beat Missouri on the road. The win over Syracuse was nice, but ever since what we've seen from this team, unfortunately, was after Steve Angeli's season-ending injury, they've just been a shell of themselves. And then SMU also beat Stanford at home 34-10. So this one's going to be interesting. Which offense takes the day here? Has Clemson, can they confidently say, hey, after that home loss to Syracuse, they've truly turned things around and they're going to start to try to roll and potentially put themselves in another position to backdoor themselves into another conference championship? And then for SMU, can they turn it around and be the playoff team that they were last year? This is an interesting one, man.
And can Clemson do it without Cade Klubnik, which is most likely going to happen? He's from the latest reports today, he may not play this game. And so I think it's a huge opportunity for Clemson. Honestly, it really is, because you get a chance to not have your star quarterback. You get to prove that, hey, the last 2 games are not flukes. We're hitting our stride. That's really what it comes down to. We're hitting our stride. But if Cade Klubnik can't play, you're starting a kid in Chris Vezina, who's a talented player. Notre Dame fans should know him, but he's 7 of 14 for 37 yards this year. And you're like, that's not really who you're going to be. But I'm with you. I don't know that. Look, the numbers look great for Clemson the last 2 weeks, Trev. I mean, they've moved the ball, they've scored, they've put a lot of points on the board. It looks great. I mean, they were over 500 yards last week against BC. That's great. They had 488 yards against North Carolina. They were 7.0 and 6.6 yards per play. Their last 4 games, including the 2 losses, they're at 6.3, 6.1, 6.7, and 6.6 in yards per play. And hey, guess what? They figured out how to run football last week against Boston College. Good job, guys. Good job. Problem is, Boston College is not very good. Boston College also allowed Stanford to run for 213 yards. Boston College is just a terrible defense, Trev. I mean, it's just there's no other way around it. They give up 504 to Clemson. They give up 503 to Pitt. They even gave up 399 to Stanford, which is like the equivalent of giving up like 550 to 600 yards to a good team. Like their defense is a mess. So, like, I don't know who Clemson is. And with SMU, they're sneakily undefeated in the league, right? I mean, because both of their losses were to Big 12 teams. So they need this win to kind of, hey guys, we're still here. Don't forget about us. We're still here. I think SMU desperately needs this win. But I also think Clemson desperately needs this win to kind of say, hey, yeah, we had a rough start, guys. We lost to 2 pretty good football teams in Georgia Tech and LSU in very close games. We just had a bad day against Syracuse. That's what they can chalk it up to. Like, you win this game, and you look at the rest of their slate, Trev, and it's like, look, we lost to a really good football team in LSU. We lost to a really good football team in Georgia Tech. We had a really bad day against Syracuse. They win this game. Now all of a sudden they're 4-3. They get a bye week. Then they have Duke at home. You win that when you're 5-3. You get Florida State at home. You're 6-3. You got to play Furman. You play at Louisville, at South Carolina. If you're good enough to beat SMU without Cade Klubnik, then you're good enough to run a table. Now they're 9-3. They're probably not in the ACC title game, but they're going to go to a bowl game, win a bowl game, be 10-3, and then we're going to do the same let's overrate Clemson thing again next year, which we were guilty of as well. We had Clemson as a preseason top 10 team, and for good reason. I mean, when you look at how they played at the end of last year, but I think the Dabo Swinney era is going to survive. I think they really need this win. I really do. And for SMU to kind of show that last year wasn't a fluke, we are a legitimate contender in the ACC every year, they also need this win. So it's going to be an interesting game.
How about Texas A&M on the road against the Arkansas Razorbacks, Brian? This one has Notre Dame implications written all over it. What do you think about this game? How do you see some of it playing out?
Trev, I told you I wanted to talk about this game, and it is really a fascinating game because my concern for Texas A&M is this a trap game for them? Arkansas they can score. I mean, the only team that they haven't scored against is Notre Dame. They've scored a lot of points against everybody else. They've moved the ball against everybody else. A&M's defense has been solid, but nothing special. But you look at A&M, what they've got coming up next week. They go to LSU. Week after they go to Missouri. They got South Carolina home. They still have Texas on the road. They just beat Florida. Are they going to overlook Arkansas on their way to LSU? Now, this is a bit of a rivalry game. They've played this game in Dallas the last few years. This game, I believe, will actually be at Arkansas. I think they're not playing the neutral site game this year, correct? Isn't this one in Fayetteville, Trev? So
I believe so.
It just reeks of a trap game for me for Texas A&M. And honestly, I want Texas A&M to keep winning for 2 reasons. Number one is Mike Elko, big Mike Elko fan. Number 2, I think it's good for Notre Dame if they keep winning because, A, you have a 1-point home loss. You should have beat, and they ran the table in the SEC. Number 2, every time A&M beats a team, it's another SEC team with another loss, right? I mean, that's obviously a good thing. If they're going to stub their toe, as a Notre Dame fan, you want it to be this game because then you say, well, look, they got beat by an Arkansas team that only lost to Tennessee by 3, only lost to Memphis by a point, only lost to Ole Miss by a touchdown in a game they should have won, and then Notre Dame annihilated them. Maybe Arkansas is better than people thought they were. I mean, that could be a talking point. But more so specifically, it's looking at it from an A&M game. It's a potential trap game. And we're going to learn a lot about this A&M team. If they go on the road and beat Arkansas, that tells me this A&M team is legit in a way that past games haven't, because that tells me they also have leadership and focus and maturity as a football team, not just talent. Because they've got talent. They got a good head football coach. But if they can avoid the trap game aspect of this tells me there's quality leadership in that locker room, and there's maturity with this football team that makes me feel like, okay, they're going to be a force to reckon with now that their schedule starts to ramp up.
Definitely one to watch. A lot of Notre Dame implications surrounding that game for sure. The other game is in the Big 12. The Baylor Bears on the road against the TCU Horned Frogs. Battle of 2 4-2 teams. And, there's been a common theme of today, and we've talked a lot about, okay, who are you? Who are these teams? And I think that conversation also fits around both Baylor and TCU. Like I said, both teams are 4-2. Baylor's lost to Auburn. They lost to Arizona State. They did beat Kansas State in their last outing, 35-34. And then you look at TCU. They're also 4-2, but their losses are also to Arizona State. But here's the difference. They lost to Kansas State this past weekend in a game that was 41-28. Brian, this one is interesting because TCU had a lot of expectations set in front of them. They were kind of more of like a dark horse, but you saw the talent. They started out the season 3-0, started out decimating North Carolina on the road 48-14. And the schedule for both teams also doesn't get a whole lot easier after this matchup either. I think this is one of those where whoever wins this matchup, and Brian, tell me if you see this differently. I think whoever wins this matchup sets himself up to use this as momentum to go on a little bit of a run. Because I look at what Baylor has left, and they're on the road against TCU this weekend. Then they're on the road against Cincinnati, who's undefeated in conference. They're home against UCF and Utah, on the road against Arizona, and finish up their season against Houston. For TCU, they're on the road against West Virginia, then home against Iowa State, on the road against BYU, at Houston, and then home against Cincinnati. So I think whoever comes away with a win in this matchup, they use this kind of as the foundation of, okay, we just beat a good quality football team. It's another Texas team. Let's go on a run. Let's use this as momentum.
Agree with you completely on that, Trevor. The only thing I would add is I think Sonny Dykes desperately needs this win. This is the year that he had to turn things around. Last week's loss to Kansas State. We talked about that game last week. We said K-State's out, but now they get to play spoiler. And that's exactly what they did for TCU. TCU needs this game bad. Baylor's actually still in it for the Big 12 title hunt. TCU will be in it with a win because two losses will get you in it. If they win this game, they're kind of last year's Arizona State, where they need a lot of things to break their way, but if they keep handling business, they've got a shot to still be in. You lose this game, most likely you're going to lose some more, and then you wonder how Sonny Dykes going to be able to kind of survive that. And now you're 3 years removed from the title run. You haven't achieved well. This team is underachieved. If they lose this game, you look at them at 4-3 like you have no business being 4-3. You blew that lead against Arizona State. You lost to a reeling Kansas State team. Like, those are not good losses, and they negate a great win over SMU by 11. And that's what the Big 12 is. So I think TCU really needs this game. And you could argue Dave Aranda does too, because his seat's a little bit warm as well if they struggle this season. But, yeah, this could be a really huge win for Baylor, and it's a survive win for TCU. Another game to keep an eye on, speaking of trap games, Trev, that Georgia Tech at Duke game's one that I know we got our eye on too.
Yeah, it sure is, man. I mean, Georgia Tech is undefeated. They're entering this matchup 6-0, and they're ranked first in the ACC. They have a really good win they have that upset win over Clemson when they were still ranked. They survived an upset on the road against Wake Forest, came back to win that one, and then they handled business against Virginia Tech. And they're going up against Duke, which is one of the only two other teams in the ACC that are still undefeated in conference. But you go and you dive a little bit deeper, you add some context to it. Okay, one of their wins came against Elon. They lost to Illinois 45-19 at home. They lost on the road against Tulane. Then they've turned things around. They're going on a 3-game win streak. They kicked it off by beating NC State 45-33. Absolutely decimated Syracuse on the road 38-3. They also got a big win against Cal on the road. I know it's Cal, and some people stick their nose up at it, but Cal was off to a better start than what people thought. It's a 4-2 football team right now. They were 4-1 going into that game. Now they get Georgia Tech at home. They survived their 2 road games instead, and now they get to host Georgia Tech in a game where, look, my concern, and you brought this up earlier, so I can't coin this as my own, but after watching Haynes King this season, it's one of those after Colorado, it's like, dude, they can't survive a season like this with your quarterback getting I mean, I'm borderline beaten to death every single Saturday. And this is one. Duke is a physical football team, and they have a relatively good defense. I mean, they held Syracuse to 3 points. NC State, we know they can put up points. They held Cal to 21. So I get nervous with Georgia Tech because a lot of their games have been closer. You know, you beat Virginia Tech by 15. You only beat Wake Forest on the road by 1. You know, Georgia Tech this season on the road hasn't been great. They beat Wake Forest by 1. They beat Colorado by 7 in the season opener, and all their other games have been at home. So I agree with you completely. The Yellow Jackets are on upset alert this week, Brian.
Big time. And look, you've got Haynes King, who has struggled to stay healthy in the past because of how he's used. Already missed a game this year. Has 2 games with they're halfway through the season, Trev. He has 2 games with over 20 carries and another one with 19. It's ridiculous. Like, you need 21 carries from Haynes King to beat Wake Forest. Really? If he needed 25 against Clemson, do it. You got to do what you got to do to beat Clemson. But really, you needed 21 carries to beat Wake Forest? I don't get it. And I kind of like Duke. I kind of like Duke in this game, honestly, Trev. But this is the one that I think tells us a lot about Georgia Tech. If you're a legit ACC title contender, playoff caliber team, this is the game that tells us that. Yeah, the Clemson game was a great win, but can you follow it up with another one? And because like you look at the rest of their schedule, you look at the rest of Georgia Tech's schedule, and it's like, look, it's set up well for them. I mean, they got Syracuse at home, Pitt at home, and then they've got 2 road games at North Carolina State and BC. The North Carolina State game will be tough. That's a good football team, but honestly, that's, to me, the only team I think has got a shot to beat them if they play their game. I mean, Pitt's always sneaky, but as far as conference play, this is the game that could determine whether or not you're a front runner to face Miami or SMU in the ACC title game. Lose this game, and all of a sudden you're in like you can't lose again at NC State, or you're going to be out of the ACC title game. The other thing too for Georgia Tech is if you win this game and run the table, and let's say you lose to Georgia by a field goal, you pretty much clinch a playoff berth. You're 11-1. Win or lose the ACC title game, you're in. And I think this is the second to last potential stumbling block for them, besides them just beating themselves. Duke and NC State are the only 2 teams left on their schedule in conference that can beat them, like outplay them. The others, like Syracuse and everybody, it's like more of a BC. It's like, dude, you beat yourself. You know, these are the only 2 teams left that can actually go out there and outplay Georgia Tech and win that football game. And on the flip side, here's a little bit of an interesting little note, Trev. Duke's now 4-2. They've got UConn on the schedule, North Carolina, Wake Forest on the schedule, home game against Virginia, and at Clemson. If Duke can win this game, they've got a shot to go 9-3, 10-2 at the end of the year. Now Manny Diaz has back-to-back 9-win seasons. I think Penn State's going to get turned down by a lot of coaches. Can Manny Diaz, the former D coordinator at Penn State, go on a run here after a win to position himself, say, hey, I'll take the job. I know how to win at Penn State. Keep an eye on that one. Look what Mike Elko's doing, the last head coach that won 9 games a couple times at Duke. Don't sleep on that, him being a guy that could position himself after they get turned down by Elko and Brian Kelly and Kurt Cignetti and all those other guys. If it's to where it's like, who do you want? Matt Rule, who can't even win at Nebraska, or Manny Diaz, who won at Duke? That's going to be interesting, Trev. Very interesting.
I like the way you think. You need a raise. All right, folks.
I'll talk to my boss about it.
All right, sounds good. Right. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's awesome. Sticking along the lines of the Big Ten here, the last game that we're really going to talk about here is in the Big Ten. The Washington Huskies are on the road against the Michigan Wolverines. I saw Archer was talking about the Huskies being unranked in the chat, despite they are being 5-1. They're 1 loss.
5-1, and they're
Yep, only losses to the number 1 team in the country. So this is an interesting game for both teams. Can Washington go on the road and have some success in the Big Ten? because we know what type of team they are at home. And can Michigan bounce back after, really just getting out physical by a USC team? So this game is going to be really, really fun to watch, man.
We know Washington's very good at home. Ohio State found that out. Ohio State won that game, but it was a dogfight. It was a battle. Washington's in a situation, Trev, where I think they should be ranked. I think the only reason they're not ranked is because they're Washington. They're in the Big Ten. That nobody talks about them. They were a preseason unranked team. Damon Williams is one of the most exciting players in college football, and nobody talks about him. And so I think up to this point in time, they're kind of getting a little bit of the shaft. However, you can do something about that these next 2 weeks. You play at Michigan this week, win that game. Next week, you get Illinois comes to you. They're going to beat Illinois next week, in my opinion. I think they win that game. Now, all of a sudden, you're 7-1, and now you are a top 25 team. And then your last 4 games are at Wisconsin, home against Purdue, at UCLA, and home against Oregon. If they beat Michigan and Illinois the next 2 weeks, you now have to start talking about Washington being a potential contender for that number 2 spot in the Big Ten title game. Now, they're going to need a lot of help because they either need Ohio State to lose twice, because Ohio State losing once doesn't help them because they'd get the tiebreaker, or they need somebody to beat Indiana. Most likely, they're sitting here potentially 10-1 going into Oregon with a chance to say, we got a legitimate shot to have an at-large berth. If we beat Oregon, we're in the playoffs, whether we're in the Big Ten title game or not. If we lose to Oregon in a close game, we've got a shot at an at-large. And I think you need a game like this at Michigan to prove that we can win away from home. Because right now, they're kind of like hitters for the Rockies back in the 90s and 2000s, right? Like, yeah, that guy's a great hitter at home, but look at his home road splits. Like he hits 350 in Colorado, but he's a 230 hitter in road games. Like, how good is he really? You need that road win, and I think this is a game for Washington to say, look, yeah, you should be ranked higher, but you know what? You got a chance to do something about it these next 2 weekends. And to your point, how does Michigan bounce back from their loss to USC? We're going to find out. And then how can Michigan handle Damon Williams? And here's the other part. If Damon Williams can go out there and lead them to a victory at Michigan this weekend and then beat Illinois next week, all of a sudden, I think if the media is competent at all, he starts getting some of those, well, if we're uncertain of the Heisman Trophy conversation, I got this really exciting kid out in Seattle that's doing some things. And I think this is the kind of game in the big house that could put him on the map. Even though Michigan's not a great team, it's still Michigan. It's still the big house. You go out there and throw for 250, run for 75, lead them to a win. All of a sudden, people are going to start taking notice of Washington. And then I promise you they're ranked next week when they host Illinois. But, yeah, you don't like where you're ranked. You don't like the lack of respect you're getting. Go do something about it. And they got a shot to do that this weekend against Michigan.
Use it as fuel, man. Use it as fuel. I agree completely. There are a couple games that we wanted to briefly mention. We're not going to take a deep dive into them. One of them, Michigan State's on the road against IU. This is just one of those quick ones where it's just like, hey, can IU avoid the dreaded upset? Look, we saw a trend last season of teams not being able to handle success, and IU just picked up, really what's their biggest win in program history on the road against a top 5 team in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State has an offense, if it is clicking, big if, but if it's clicking, has an offense that can keep them around in a game against IU on the road. You can't overlook this team. Do I think IU wins? Yes, I do. And there's honestly a part of me that thinks IU wins handily. But if there is a weekend where college football is going to college football, we get to see, okay, Kurt Cignetti talked about how successful he was. Now that you've actually had it at this level, how do you handle it? And I think that's going to be really interesting.
How do you handle success? And then, they're going to be looking at Michigan State. This team sucks. They just got dominated by UCLA. And we're looking at this game kind of like we looked when Penn State was going out to play UCLA. And that's kind of how it's viewed. Aiden Childs is a little banged up, how it's going to be. It's just, can you handle success? And then, Trev, that's the same thing with Minnesota or with Nebraska at Minnesota. It's not that it's a matchup I care to talk about, but it's one of those, hey, man, you just jumped into the top 25. You still haven't beaten anybody, but now you're a top 25 football team. and you're going to play Minnesota, who's a solid middle of the road Big Ten team that has been pretty decent at home. Can you handle success and not avoid that dreaded upset game against a team that you should beat? I'm very much looking forward to those two games in the Big Ten this weekend, Trev.
Last game that we're going to talk about here before we get out of here today, folks, is UNLV at Boise State. Little group of 5 action. Here's the interesting thing about this matchup. UNLV is undefeated. Boise State on the season is 4-2. Here's the weird thing about them. Every single win has been by double digits. Every loss, both losses that they have are by at least 21 points. So this is one of those games where it's like, okay, like this was a really competitive matchup last year. UNLV has a little bit of a different roster. Boise State doesn't have Ashton Jeanty. What takes the day here? I'm going to be keeping my eye on this one too. Little group of 5 action out in the Mountain West. That one's going to be really interesting too.
And Dan Mullen wins another game. Maybe they jump into the top 25 here in a couple weeks. There's a bunch of jobs coming open. Does his name start getting thrown in there? That's another thing that you start looking at some of these games that way, Trevor, like these coaches like Tulane and South Florida and UNLV and Duke, like their coaches are saying, hey, that's part of Dan Mullen's game plan, but it's just like it's the reality of if you win a game like this against Boise State, get some revenge over losing twice to them last week, do something that Barry Odom couldn't do last year, and 2 chances couldn't beat Boise State. And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, man, let's not forget who's coaching there. And let's not forget it's a guy that, they went on the road and beat Boise State. And that's a coach who, beat UCLA. That's a coach who was playing for the SEC title a few years ago. You know what I mean? Like maybe we should go look at him again. That guy won in Starkville. Hadn't really gone well for coaches in Starkville since he left. You know what I mean? Hasn't really gone well for Florida and Gainesville since he left. Maybe this guy's a really good football coach. If he can, but this is the kind of game where you can kind of really open people's eyes. Hey, guys, don't forget about me when all these jobs are opening up. I mean, if I'm from like, Dan, please come back. We totally screwed up by firing you, it won't happen. But yeah, it's a big game for him as well when it comes to the coaching searches that are about to happen.
Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it here for us today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Oh, excuse me. One super chat from A. Reagan. Thank you for the super chat. On my way to South Bend, go Irish. That will be me early Saturday morning. Can't wait to hopefully meet you up there, A. Reagan. That'll be a lot of fun. Quick reminder before we do get out of here, Irish Breakdown is having a tailgate. I know that Brian's mom has a lot of food prep, so bring your appetites. It's going to be a lot of fun. Brian, what time should they expect?
Our plan is to get there around noon. Right. Noon to 12:30ish is our goal. But I'll tweet out when we're on our way. Follow me, Coach D178. Or on the message board. I'll tweet out when we're on our way. And then when we find the place we're going to be in the Joy slot, we'll be at the Joy slot. You can then, I'll tweet that out, put that on the board, and it's basically a lamppost. We'll also have the IB flagpole there. Rain or shine, we'll have the flagpole out there. We're working on trying to find some tarps to try to help keep it covered a little bit in case it rains and all that kind of stuff. So we're working on that. But yeah, plan on being there at least noon. We're going to do something fun. We're going to have some different food at different times. We're going to have like an hour. I'm going to start making smash burgers. We're thinking about doing that like around 3 or 4 o'clock. It's like, okay, in this hour, I'm going to have a bunch of, burgers and dogs. If you want some, come during that time. So, we're still planning all that kind of stuff out. But yeah, it's going to be a fun day. I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it.
I am too. And Lauren and I will be up there. We're bringing some friends. Their first time up at Notre Dame on campus. Figure there is no better time to do that. Super chat for Pete Weber. Thank you for the super chat, Pete. I feel like I'm always a week or two off when I try to throw some dough for the tailgate, but I got it right this time. Go Irish.
Appreciate you, Pete. Appreciate you very much, man. Also, Trev, you guys are going live tonight, but also tomorrow, Trevor and Sean are going to preview the big recruiting weekend, and then after that, they're going to have a mailbag. So, guys, be ready for that, Sean and Trev, to have the mailbag tomorrow after the recruiting night. But I am very much looking forward. I'll be listening on my drive home. We're driving home from Pennsylvania today. My wife's dad's funeral was today, so I'll be out driving home from that, listening to the spread option tonight on the CFB Nation channel. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Well, folks, on your way out of here, be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Like Brian said, subscribe to the CFB Nation channel as well. Bill Trocchi and Bill Bender also have a preview out for this week's game as well. So make sure you're subscribed to that channel. Vince and I'll go live tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time for the spread option. Do not want to miss this week. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. IB Nation Sports Beat's going live at 5 p.m. I'll also be on that show, so tune in if you haven't gotten enough of me today. But until next time, for Brian, I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.